In the quiet spaces between words, there exists a language older than time itself. The Sierra Nevada mountains have always known this truth, have held it in ancient stone, and whispered it through rustling pines. Some say the wild horses that roam these peaks carry memories beyond human understanding, that their eyes reflect something we've forgotten. What happens when a child who cannot speak meets a horse that cannot be tamed, when silence becomes a doorway rather than a barrier? In the drought-stricken valley of Whispering Pines, 10-year-old Emma hasn't spoken a word since the laboratory fire that took her father. But in her drawings, a mysterious black horse appears, a horse she's never seen bearing symbols no one understands. Some connections transcend explanation. Some voices need no sound to be heard. This is a story about finding your voice in the most unexpected places and discovering that sometimes the most profound communication happens in the spaces between words. Sierra Nevada Mountains, 1972. The grainy 16mm film flickered on the projector screen. A small group of military researchers leaned forward in their metal chairs, attention fixed on the extraordinary footage before them. On screen, a young Native American girl stood perfectly still amid a herd of wild Mustangs. Her small frame should have appeared vulnerable against the powerful creatures surrounding her, yet there was a preternatural calm in her posture. One by one, the wild horses' creatures, known for their fierce independence, lowered their heads in her presence. It was as though an invisible conversation flowed between them. "Remarkable," whispered a scientist, breaking the stunned silence in the viewing room. "The Whispering Pines tribe has demonstrated this ability across 3 generations now." The lead researcher, a man with thoughtful eyes and a methodical demeanor, made notes in a leather-bound journal. His voice, captured on the film's narration track, played over the mesmerizing scene. "If we can understand this method of communication," the voice intoned with academic detachment that couldn't quite mask an undercurrent of wonder, "it will change everything. The military applications alone." The screen abruptly cut to static. Sierra Nevada wilderness, present day. The black Mustang's powerful muscles strained as it tore through the underbrush. Its eyes, wide with terror, reflected the primal fear of the hunted. Blood matted the fur on its flank, where a tranquilizer dart had grazed but failed to embed. Behind its ear, barely visible through its wild mane, a small metallic device caught the morning light. From overhead came the rhythmic thundering of helicopter blades slicing through the mountain air. Inside, a team of men in tactical gear monitored screens displaying thermal imagery of the forest below. The red heat signature of the horse, designated S7 in their communications, moved with surprising speed and intelligence, weaving through terrain that should have trapped it. "Target is heading into Sector 4, reported the pilot, his voice clinically detached. "Appears to be seeking higher ground." A man in the co-pilot seat adjusted his headset. Unlike the others, he wore civilian clothes, an expensive suit incongruous with the rugged operation. His eyes never left the screen, tracking the horse's movement. "S7 must be recovered at any cost," he stated, his tone leaving no room for negotiation. "The asset contains technology worth more than everyone on this helicopter combined." As if sensing the heightened urgency of its pursuers, the black Mustang, known as Shadow to the locals, who occasionally glimpsed it at the forest's edge, changed direction, abruptly diving into a ravine where the dense canopy blocked thermal imaging. "We've lost visual," announced the technician monitoring the screens. The man in the suit didn't react visibly, but his knuckles whitened as he gripped the armrest. "Find it," he ordered. "That horse knows exactly what it's doing." Whispering Pines Valley autumn had painted the small valley in muted gold and amber, but the beauty was tinged with desperation. 3 years of severe drought had left the once verdant landscape parched. Creeks had dwindled to trickles, fields lay fallow, and the wild grasses that once carpeted the valley floor had withered to brittle straw. In a modest house on the outskirts of town, Arthur Riley stood at his kitchen window, cup of coffee cooling in his weathered hand as he surveyed the dusty yard. At 67, his tall frame remained strong, despite the slight stoop to his shoulders, a physical manifestation of the burdens he carried. Deep lines etched his face, mapping a life of service, first as a military medic in Vietnam, then as the town's veterinarian. "Another day without rain," he murmured to no one. His voice, rough-edged but gentle, had become accustomed to one-sided conversations. It had been 18 months since his granddaughter Emma had spoken a word. A small notebook skidded across the kitchen table, stopping at his elbow. Arthur turned to find Emma standing there, her solemn 10-year-old face framed by unruly brown hair. Her eyes, intelligent and observant, waited for him to look at what she'd drawn. "What have you got for me today, sweetheart?" he asked, setting down his coffee to pick up the notebook. The drawing showed the now familiar black horse rendered with surprising detail for a child her age. But surrounding the horse were strange symbols, curved lines and geometric shapes that seemed to pulse with significance, though Arthur couldn't decipher their meaning. "That's Shadow again, isn't it?" Arthur traced the outline of the horse with his finger. "You've never even seen this horse, Emma, just heard the stories. Why are you so fascinated with him?" Emma tapped insistently at the symbols surrounding the horse. "And these markings, do you know what they mean?" The girl shrugged frustration, briefly clouding her features, before she retreated into the patient resignation that had become her default expression. She took back the notebook and added another symbol, a perfect circle with a dot at its center. Arthur's eyes lingered on a framed photograph hanging on the wall nearby his son-in-law, Dr. Nathan Foster, in his lab coat, smiling with the confident optimism of a man who believed science could solve any problem. The glass was still cracked from when Arthur had thrown it against the wall the day of the laboratory fire that had supposedly claimed Nathan's life. "I should have stopped you," Arthur whispered to the photograph when Emma had left the room. "I knew what you were getting into, and I still let you go." Later that morning in his veterinary clinic converted from an old barn, Arthur bent over his current patient, a young golden eagle with an injured wing. The majestic bird watched him with fierce, intelligent eyes as he carefully checked the healing progress. "You're doing better today," he told the eagle, his voice taking on the storytelling cadence he often used with his animal patients. "Reminds me of a buddy I had in Nam, medic like me. Got his arm torn up pretty bad in an ambush near Quezon. Doctors wanted to amputate, but he refused. Said he'd rather have a busted wing than no wing at all." The eagle blinked slowly, seeming to absorb his words. 6 months of rehabilitation, and he was back in the field. Not at 100%, but flying in his own way. Arthur gently extended the bird's wing, nodding with satisfaction. "You'll fly again, too. Maybe not tomorrow, but soon. Sononorm." The clinic door creaked open, and Sheriff Diane Walker entered, her uniform crisp, despite the dust that seemed to coat everything in the valley these days. At 55, she carried herself with the disciplined posture ingrained during her military service, though her expression softened when she saw Arthur. "Talking to the wildlife again?" she asked, a familiar warmth in her voice. "They're the best listeners," Arthur replied carefully, returning the eagle to its enclosure. "What brings you by Diane? Don't tell me Mrs. Henderson's goat got into her garden again." The sheriff's slight smile faded. "Wish it was that simple. We've had 3 reports of livestock attacks in the past week. Ranchers are saying it's a black Mustang. Big one with unusual aggression." Arthur stilled his mind, immediately going to Emma's drawings. "Shadow. That's what they're calling it, though nobody's gotten a clear enough look to confirm if it's the same horse from all those old stories." She leaned against the examination table. "But that's not the strangest part. Hank Mercer swears he saw something metallic attached to the horse, some kind of device behind its ear." Arthur's expression darkened. "That doesn't sound like wildlife behavior. Sounds like someone's been experimenting." "My thoughts exactly." Diane studied him closely. "You worked with those research types before you came back here, didn't you? Any idea what kind of device might be attached to a wild horse?" Arthur turned away, busying himself with organizing his instruments. "Been a long time since I was involved in that world, Diane." "Arthur." Her voice took on the no-nonsense tone that had solved countless local disputes. "This is me you're talking to. If there's something you know—" "I don't—" He cut her off more sharply than intended. After a moment, he sighed. "At least nothing concrete. But if someone is using wildlife for research without permits, that's federal territory. You might want to contact the rangers at the national park." Sheriff Walker watched him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "Already did. They're sending someone tomorrow. Just thought you might appreciate the heads up, especially with Emma and her connection to these things." Arthur's hands stilled. What do you mean? Come on, Arthur. The whole town knows she draws that horse constantly. A horse nobody's seen clearly in years, if it's even the same one. Kids pick up on things adults miss sometimes. She pushed away from the table. Just keep an eye on her. Whatever's going on with that horse, it might not be safe. After she left, Arthur pulled out his phone and scrolled to a contact he hadn't used in years. His thumb hovered over the name Mason Reed before he put the phone away without calling. Some doors were better left closed. Emma sat cross-legged at the edge of the property, her sketchbook open beside her, as she arranged small stones in patterns that mirrored the symbols in her drawings. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the drought-hardened ground, but she barely noticed the heat. In her mind, she could see the black horse running, feel its fear and determination. The connection had started as faint impressions several weeks ago, glimpses of forest paths, the sensation of powerful muscles, straining the taste of bitter mountain streams. But today the images came stronger, more urgent. Something was wrong. The horse shadow, she had named him in her silent thoughts, was in danger. Emma's hands worked faster, arranging the stones in a new pattern. If only she could make Grandpa understand. If only she could make anyone understand. The words were there, trapped inside her mind, but whenever she tried to speak, her throat closed as though filled with the same smoke that had taken her father from her. A twig snapped behind her, and Emma turned to find Alex Morgan watching her from a few yards away. The park ranger's uniform was dusty from the trail, and a canteen hung from his belt. At 36, he retained the hypervigilance of his special forces training, his eyes constantly scanning the surroundings, even as he offered her a friendly nod. "Hey there, Emma," he said, his voice deliberately casual. "Your grandfather around." She pointed toward the clinic, then returned to her stone arrangement, instead of leaving Alex crouched nearby, studying her work with genuine interest. "That's an interesting pattern. Does it mean something?" Emma hesitated, then flipped through her sketchbook to show him a drawing of Shadow with the same symbols surrounding him. The mysterious black horse, huh? Alex's expression remained neutral, but something flickered in his eyes. "You know, I think I might have spotted him up near Crescent Ridge yesterday." Emma's head snapped up, her eyes suddenly intense. "Yeah, big fellow. Fastest horse I've ever seen." He pointed to her drawing. "Couldn't see if he had any markings like these, though. I was pretty far away." Emma tore out a fresh page from her sketchbook and quickly sketched a map of the local terrain. With precise movements, she marked an X in a small valley northeast of Crescent Ridge, then looked up at Alex expectantly. The ranger studied the crude map, his brow furrowing. "That's Eagle's Hollow. Are you saying that's where the horse is?" She nodded emphatically. "Emma, that's over 15 miles from where I spotted him through some of the roughest terrain in the area. And you've never even been to that part of the forest." Alex's voice remained gentle, but concern had crept in. "How would you know where he is?" Emma only tapped the map again, her expression resolute. Alex was about to question her further when Arthur's voice called from the clinic. "Emma, Alex, everything okay out there?" "All good," Alex called back, rising to his feet. "Just saying hello to Emma before checking in with you." As the ranger walked toward the clinic, Emma returned to her stone pattern, adding a final piece at the center. In her mind, she could feel Shadow's presence closer now somehow, as though her acknowledgement of him had strengthened their connection. "I know where you are," she thought, focusing on the sensation. "I can help you." For the briefest moment, she felt something respond, a flicker of awareness that wasn't her own, a consciousness both foreign and familiar, reaching back across the inexplicable connection between them. Inside the clinic, Arthur listened with growing unease as Alex described the recent sightings of the Black Mustang. "Sheriff Walker already filled me in on the livestock attacks," Arthur said, leaning against his desk. "But you're saying this horse is showing unusual behavior beyond aggression?" Alex nodded, his military precision evident in his concise report. "It's evading tracking methods that would trap any normal wild horse, almost as if it can predict our movements. And it's not running with any herd completely solitary, which is uncommon for Mustangs. And the device Walker mentioned, I couldn't confirm it myself, but 3 separate witnesses have reported seeing something metallic behind its ear. Could be a tracking tag, but normal wildlife tags don't cause behavioral changes. Arthur finished his expression grim. Exactly. Alex hesitated. There's something else. When I was stationed overseas, I saw similar behavioral modifications in animals used for specialized purposes. Military purposes. Arthur's gaze sharpened. What kind of purposes? Detection of explosives, surveillance, even psychological operations. But those were trained animals, not wild ones. Alex glanced toward the window where Emma could be seen still arranging her stones. Your granddaughter seems to know something about this horse. Emma's been through a lot, Arthur said defensively. The drawing's the fixation on this horse, it's just her way of processing grief. With all due respect, sir, she just drew me a map to a location she's never visited, marking it as the horse's current position. That goes beyond normal childhood imagination. Arthur fell silent, internal conflict evident in his expression. Look, Alex continued, his voice lowering. I've seen some things that conventional science can't easily explain. In Afghanistan, we had a rescue operative who could somehow sense where wounded soldiers were even without radio contact or logical information. He saved my entire unit that way. He met Arthur's gaze directly. So when I see a child who might have some kind of unusual perception, I don't dismiss it. Before Arthur could respond, the clinic door swung open. A man in an expensive suit entered, flanked by two others in more casual but clearly professional attire. Despite being in his late 50s, he carried himself with the energy of someone younger, his smile practiced and confident. Arthur Riley, he said, extending his hand. It's been a long time. Arthur stiffened, making no move to accept the handshake. Mason Reed, what are you doing here? Reed lowered his hand, his smile unwavering. That's not much of a welcome for an old friend. His gaze shifted to Alex. And you must be Ranger Morgan. I appreciate your efforts in tracking our subject, but we'll be taking over from here. Alex's posture straightened imperceptibly. And you are? Mason Reed, director of the Advanced Ecological Research Agency. Reed handed him a business card. We're here about the horse that's been causing trouble in your valley. Era. Alex glanced at the card. Never heard of it. We keep a low profile. Specialized research government contracts, you understand. Reed turned back to Arthur. I was hoping we could speak privately, for old time's sake. Arthur's jaw tightened, but he gave Alex a small nod. It's all right. I know Dr. Reed from before. Give us a few minutes. After Alex reluctantly left, Reed's affable demeanor shifted subtly. You're looking well, Arthur. Rural life agrees with you. Cut the small talk, Mason. What do you want? Reed sighed, walking to the window that overlooked the yard where Emma continued her solitary activity. Beautiful child. She has her father's focus. He turned back to Arthur. We're here for the horse, obviously. S7 is Era property, part of an ongoing research project of significant importance. S7. Arthur's voice was cold. You're putting tracking devices on wild horses now? It's considerably more than a tracking device. Reed sat on the edge of the examination table, looking suddenly weary. The harmonic project didn't end when you left, Arthur. Nathan took it further than any of us imagined possible. At the mention of his son-in-law, Arthur's composure cracked. Don't you dare speak his name. Whatever happened in that lab fire was tragic, Reed interrupted smoothly. Nathan was a brilliant scientist and a dear friend. But his work lives on, and right now that work is running wild in your mountains, potentially dangerous to anyone who crosses its path. Arthur studied Reed's face, searching for the idealistic young scientist he'd once known. What's really going on, Mason? This isn't just about recovering experimental equipment. For a moment, Reed's carefully maintained facade faltered. He pulled out his phone and showed Arthur a photo of a woman in a hospital bed, her once beautiful features now gaunt, her eyes vacant. Eliza, my wife. Early onset Alzheimer's advancing rapidly. Arthur looked away, unwilling to let sympathy cloud his judgment. I'm sorry to hear that, but what does this have to do with the neural interface technology we developed for the Harmonic project? Reed continued, pocketing his phone. Has applications far beyond animal communication. It could revolutionize treatment for degenerative brain diseases. But we need S7 back. The interface it's carrying contains critical data. So use humane capture methods. Why the military-style operation? Reed's expression hardened. Because that horse isn't just carrying technology, Arthur. It's been changed by it. The longer it remains active, the more the interface adapts to its neural pathways. We're running out of time. Arthur moved to his desk, putting physical distance between them. I'm retired, Mason. This isn't my problem anymore. Isn't it? Reed's voice took on a subtle edge. Your granddaughter has been having strange dreams, hasn't she? Drawing symbols she doesn't understand? That's not coincidence, Arthur. Arthur went very still. What are you saying? Emma has the gift, like her mother, like some of the Whispering Pines people we studied all those years ago. Reed stepped closer. The horse is reaching out, creating connections, and for some reason it's connected to her. Get out, Arthur said quietly. We need your help, Arthur. You know these mountains better than anyone. Help us find S7, and I promise we'll be gone within a day. I said, get out. Reed studied him for a long moment, then nodded. As you wish, but we'll find the horse with or without you. And when we do, I hope it hasn't established a connection that will be painful to break. He walked to the door, pausing with his hand on the knob. We'll be at the Ridge Creek Hotel if you change your mind. After Reed left, Arthur stood motionless, his mind racing through implications and possibilities. Finally, he moved to a locked cabinet in the corner of his office. From inside, he withdrew a dusty box marked with the same circular symbol Emma had drawn in her notebook. Sheriff Walker stared at the hotel business card in her hand, her instincts on high alert. Advanced Ecological Research Agency, and they just showed up, no warning, no coordination with local authorities. Alex nodded, keeping his voice low, though they were alone in her office. 6 men that I've counted. Professional types. The leader Reed knows Arthur from way back. Arthur didn't seem happy to see him. That's putting it mildly. Alex leaned against the wall, arms crossed. Something's off about this whole situation. Since when does a research agency bring a tactical team to capture one horse? Walker tapped the card against her desk. I ran the agency name through our databases. They exist on paper, incorporated in Delaware headquarters in Virginia, vague mission statement about ecological innovation. But the funding structure is opaque, and they've got connections to several defense contractors. Military research masquerading as environmental science. Wouldn't be the first time. She sighed, her years of experience evident in the weariness of the sound. What's your read on the situation, Alex? You've got the background for this kind of thing. Alex considered his words carefully. In my experience, when specialized units pursue a target with this level of resources, it's either extremely valuable or extremely dangerous. Maybe both. A horse, Walker raised an eyebrow. A horse with technology attached to it. Technology worth enough to justify a helicopter thermal imaging and a team of operatives. Alex straightened. I'm going back out tomorrow at first light. The more I think about Emma's map, the more I want to check Eagles Hollow. Be careful, Walker warned. These era people don't strike me as the type who appreciate interference. I'll make some calls, see if I can get someone at the federal level to verify their operation. As Alex left, Sheriff Walker stared out her window at the drought-stricken town. 23 years in law enforcement had given her a sixth sense for trouble brewing, and right now every instinct told her a storm was coming to Whispering Pines, one that had nothing to do with the rain they so desperately needed. Night fell over the valley, bringing a brief respite from the relentless heat. Emma stood at her bedroom window, gazing at the stars scattered across the clear sky. The drought that plagued the valley had at least one silver lining. The stars shone with remarkable clarity in the dry air. She pressed her palm against the cool glass, feeling the strange urgency that had been building all day. Shadow was in trouble. She knew it with the same certainty she knew her own name, though she couldn't explain how the knowledge came to her. A soft knock at her door preceded Arthur's entrance. He carried a steaming mug of hot chocolate, their nightly ritual, since she'd come to live with him. Thought you might still be awake, he said, setting the mug on her nightstand. Busy mind tonight. Emma nodded, returning to the window. Arthur watched her for a moment, then retrieved something from his pocket, a small worn photograph. I found this today. Thought you might want to see it. So, Emma took the photo, studying it in the dim light. Three younger men stood before a whiteboard covered in equations and diagrams, her grandfather, her father, and the man who had visited today. That's from the early days of Project Harmonic, Arthur explained, sitting on the edge of her bed. Before you were born, your father Mason Reed and me, we were trying to understand how certain people could communicate with animals at a level that went beyond normal training or behavior. Emma pointed to one of the diagrams on the whiteboard, a circular pattern similar to what she'd been drawing. Yes, Arthur said softly. That's the same symbol. It represents a harmonic frequency pattern we discovered, a kind of bridge between human and animal consciousness. He took a deep breath. Emma, the man who came today, Dr. Reed, he thinks the horse you've been drawing might be carrying technology based on our research. Technology that could be dangerous. Emma's eyes widened and she shook her head vehemently. You don't think it's dangerous? Arthur asked. She pointed to her own chest, then made a protective gesture. You think the horse is trying to protect itself? Arthur watched her closely. Or protect something else? Emma grabbed her sketchbook, flipping to the map she'd drawn for Alex. She circled Eagle's Hollow, then looked up at her grandfather with pleading eyes. That's where the horse is. You're sure? She nodded emphatically. Arthur ran a hand through his thinning hair, internal conflict evident in his expression. Emma, I need to ask you something important, and I need you to be honest with me. He took both her small hands in his. These drawings, these symbols, are they coming from your imagination, or are they coming from somewhere else? From someone else? Emma pointed to her head, then made a flowing motion toward her heart. You feel them, like thoughts that aren't quite yours. She nodded, relief washing over her face at being understood. Arthur closed his eyes briefly. Your mother had this ability. It scared her sometimes. That's why she left the project, left all of us for a while. He looked at the photograph again. I hoped it might have skipped you. Emma tugged at his sleeve, pulling him back to the present moment. She pointed again at the map, her expression urgent. You want to go there to find the horse? She nodded. Emma, it could be dangerous. If Reed is right about the technology. She grabbed her notebook and wrote a single word in large, determined letters. Please. Arthur studied her face, seeing the same stubborn resolve that had characterized her father. We'll talk more in the morning, he finally said, standing up. Drink your hot chocolate before it gets cold and try to get some sleep. After he left, Emma returned to the window. In her mind, she reached out across the night, searching for the connection that had been growing stronger each day. I'm coming, she thought. Hold on. Far away in the depths of Eagle's Hollow shadow, raised his head, nostrils flaring, as though catching a scent on the wind. The device behind his ear emitted a soft, pulsing glow in the darkness. The following morning dawned with an unusual haze, the sun, a dim red orb, struggling to penetrate the dry dust suspended in the air. Emma was already dressed and waiting by the front door when Arthur emerged from his bedroom. You're up early, he observed, noting her backpack and the determined set of her jaw. Emma, we can't just go charging into the mountains based on... A sharp knock interrupted him. Arthur opened the door to find Alex Morgan on the porch, his expression grim. We've got a situation, the ranger said without preamble. Reed's team mobilized before dawn. They're heading to Eagle's Hollow with capture equipment, and they've got some kind of sonic device with them. Arthur's face darkened. How do you know this? I was already on the trail when they passed me. Didn't see me. Alex glanced at Emma, noting her ready stance. Looks like someone else was planning an expedition too. Emma believes the horse is there, Arthur admitted. She's connected to it somehow. Alex nodded, unsurprised. I believe her, which is why we need to move now before Reed's team gets there first. Wait, Arthur held up a hand. We're talking about interfering with a government-sanctioned operation. If that's really what they are. There's something Reed didn't tell you, Alex said, lowering his voice. I made some calls last night. A friend at the Department of Interior checked into ERA. They do have legitimate research contracts, but there's also a classified military component to their work. Something called nonverbal field influence protocols. Mind control, Arthur translated, his voice hollow. They weaponized it. That's what Nathan was afraid of. Emma tugged at Arthur's sleeve, her eyes pleading. She's right, Alex said. Whatever's going on, that horse doesn't deserve to be treated like a military asset. And if Emma's connection is real, Reed's team might do more damage than they realize. Arthur hesitated only a moment longer. I'll get my kit. 5 minutes. As they prepared to leave, none of them noticed Dr. Olivia Chen watching from a rental car parked down the road, her phone capturing images of their hasty departure. Reed surveyed the terrain from the helicopter's open door, his expression tense as he observed his team positioning themselves around the perimeter of Eagles Hollow. The small valley nestled between two steep ridges created a natural trap, exactly what they needed to capture the elusive S7. Sonic disruptor in position, sir, reported the team leader through Reed's earpiece. Ready to activate on your command. Wait for visual confirmation, Reed ordered. Remember, we need the subject alive and with minimal trauma to the neural tissue. His phone buzzed with an incoming message. It was from Dr. Chen. Riley Morgan and the girl heading your way. ETA 30 minutes. Reed cursed under his breath. He'd hoped Arthur would stay out of this for his own sake as much as for the operation's success. The girl's involvement complicated things even further. Accelerate the timeline, he instructed his team. I want S7 contained before we have visitors. As if on cue, movement flickered at the far end of the hollow, a flash of black against the dry golden grass. S7 had emerged from the tree line, moving with the same unnatural awareness that had made it so difficult to track. Subject spotted, came the confirmation. Moving into Sector 3, Reed watched through binoculars as the magnificent black Mustang picked its way cautiously across the open ground. Even at this distance, he could see the intelligence in its movements, the way it tested the air, the deliberate placement of each hoof. Not normal horse behavior, not anymore. Activate the disruptor at 20%, he ordered. Herd it toward the capture zone. A high-pitched hum just at the edge of human hearing emanated from devices positioned around the hollow. The effect on Shadow was immediate. The horse tossed its head violently, as though fighting an invisible force. It wheeled around, seeking escape, only to find its path blocked by the rising frequency. Increase to 40%, Reed instructed, watching the horse's increasingly erratic movements with scientific detachment that masked his inner turmoil. Deploy the containment team. Emma suddenly stumbled on the trail, clutching her head in pain. Arthur was at her side, instantly supporting her small frame as she swayed. Emma, what's wrong? She couldn't answer, couldn't even think clearly through the stabbing pain behind her eyes. Images flashed through her mind, Shadow running, panicking, fighting against an invisible force that felt like needles in his brain. Alex crouched beside them, offering his canteen. We're still at least 15 minutes from the hollow, he said, glancing ahead with concern. But something's definitely happening. Listen. In the silence of the forest, a faint humming could be detected, not a natural sound, but something mechanical, purposeful. Emma pushed away the canteen, gesturing frantically for them to hurry. The pain was already receding, replaced by a desperate urgency. She broke into a run, following the narrow trail with surprising speed. Emma, wait! Arthur called, but she didn't slow down. Alex exchanged a quick look with Arthur. I'll stay with her. You follow as quickly as you can. He sprinted after the girl, easily catching up, but making no attempt to stop her headlong rush toward whatever connection was pulling her forward. Shadow fought against the increasing pressure in his head, his powerful body bucking and rearing as the sonic waves corralled him toward the waiting capture team. The device behind his ear pulsed with increasing frequency, alternating between blue and amber light. Reed watched from the elevated position, his scientific curiosity momentarily overriding his focus on the operation. The horse's resistance to the sonic disruptor was remarkable, far stronger than any of their test subjects had demonstrated. It was as though S7 had adapted to the technology, was fighting it on its own terms. Increase to 60%, he ordered. We need to end this quickly. As the sonic pressure intensified, Shadow seemed to reach a breaking point. The horse reared dramatically, eyes wild with pain and fear, then charged directly toward the weakest point in the containment perimeter, a section where the rocky terrain had forced the team to position their equipment farther apart than the optimal spacing. "He's going to breach," shouted the team leader. "Fire the nets." Compressed air launchers fired electrified capture nets toward the charging horse. The first missed entirely as Shadow swerved with impossible precision. The second caught his flank but tore free as he kicked violently, leaving a bloody gash along his side. Reed grabbed a radio. "Maximum disruption. Hakuro." The sonic wave amplified to its highest setting, a brutal assault on Shadow's neural pathways designed to temporarily incapacitate any mammalian brain. The horse staggered, legs buckling, as he fought to maintain consciousness. "We've got him," Reed murmured, relief evident in his voice. Then, like an apparition from the forest, Emma emerged at the edge of the hollow. "What the—" Reed raised his binoculars in disbelief. "Shut it down, shut everything down now." But his order came too late. Emma was already running across the open ground toward the struggling horse, Alex Morgan, sprinting behind her, calling her name. "Hold your fire!" Reed shouted as he saw one of his men raising a tranquilizer rifle. "That's a child." The scene below froze in a tableau of suspended action, the capture team poised with their equipment, Shadow swaying on unsteady legs and Emma running toward him with single-minded determination. As she reached the horse, something extraordinary happened. The constant background sounds of the forest, the rustle of leaves, the distant calls of birds, even the soft gurgle of a nearby stream all ceased simultaneously. A profound, unnatural silence descended over Eagle's Hollow, as though the world itself held its breath. Shadow, who had fought viciously against Reed's team, turned toward Emma with an entirely different demeanor. The massive horse, still trembling from the effects of the sonic disruption, lowered his proud head toward the small girl who stood before him without fear. Emma reached up her hand, hovering inches from Shadow's muzzle. For a heartbeat, the tableau held child and horse connected by something beyond the understanding of the watchers. Then Shadow closed the distance, pressing his muzzle gently against her palm. Through his binoculars, Reed watched the interaction with scientific awe that rapidly transformed into dawning comprehension. "Impossible," he whispered. "She's a speaker." The moment Emma's hand touched Shadow's muzzle, her consciousness exploded with images and sensations not her own. She saw a sterile laboratory, bright lights her father's face made strange by protective goggles. His voice came to her, distorted as though underwater. "This device isn't for control, it's for protection." The vision shifted, a room filled with screens, her father arguing with Reed, their voices raised in anger she couldn't quite hear. Then flame, smoke, confusion. She gasped, the intensity of the connection momentarily overwhelming her. Shadow steadied her with his presence, his consciousness intertwined with hers in ways she couldn't fully comprehend, but instinctively trusted. "Run," she thought the word, forming clearly in her mind, though her voice remained locked away. "Come with me." Shadow's ears flicked forward, and without hesitation he moved alongside her, matching his pace to her small steps as they turned away from the capture team. "Stop them," Reed ordered, but his voice lacked conviction. The scientific part of his mind was already cataloging the implications of what he was witnessing, a natural harmonic connection forming, without technological assistance, exactly what they'd been trying to artificially create for years. Alex reached Emma's side, careful not to make any sudden movements that might startle the horse. "Easy," he murmured, more to the capture team than to Shadow. "We're just going to walk away slowly." From the tree line on the opposite side of the hollow, Arthur emerged, his face pale with shock as he witnessed his granddaughter leading the wild Mustang as docilely as a pet pony. One of Reed's men raised his tranquilizer rifle again, seeking a clear shot at the horse. "Stand down," Reed snapped. "Let them go." "Sir." The man looked confused. "The asset is no longer our primary concern." Reed's eyes remained fixed on Emma. "We've just discovered something far more valuable." As the strange procession girl, horse ranger, and veterinarian made their way out of Eagle's Hollow, Reed watched with the calculating gaze of a scientist presented with unexpected experimental results. The operation hadn't gone as planned, but perhaps the outcome would prove even more beneficial to their ultimate goals. "Pack up the equipment," he instructed his team, "and get Dr. Chen on the phone. Tell her to proceed with surveillance package 2. The unnatural silence that had fallen over the hollow gradually lifted as they departed, the sounds of the forest returning one by one, like instruments rejoining an orchestra after a dramatic pause. But the harmony had shifted subtly, as though the very cadence of the wilderness had been altered by what had transpired. In the helicopter above, Reed made a note in his digital recorder: Project Harmonic Supplemental Report. We have identified a natural speaker in subject EF, age 10. Preliminary observation suggests an unprecedented level of neural synchronization with test subject S7. Recommend immediate implementation of Protocol Whisper. He gazed out at the retreating figures below, his expression unreadable. Nathan, he murmured to himself, what did you really discover before you disappeared? Arthur's veterinary clinic had never housed a patient quite like Shadow. The black Mustang occupied the largest stall, modified hastily to accommodate his size and strength. Despite the spacious enclosure, the wild horse remained vigilant, muscles tensed beneath his sleek coat, ready to bolt at the slightest provocation. His eyes, intelligent and wary, tracked every movement in the clinic. For everyone except Emma, he displayed the dangerous unpredictability of a truly wild creature. Stand back, Arthur warned Alex, as the ranger approached the stall with a bucket of fresh water. He's tolerating our presence, but barely. As if to emphasize the point, Shadow snorted aggressively, pawing at the ground with a front hoof. The recently bandaged wound on his flank had been treated only because Emma had stood beside him, her small hand resting on his neck, while Arthur worked with the efficiency of his military medical training. I've never seen anything like it, Alex murmured, setting the water bucket where Arthur could reach it. The connection between them, it's almost tangible. Through the clinic window, they could see Emma sitting cross-legged in the dusty yard, drawing intently in her notebook. Since their return from Eagle's Hollow, she had barely left Shadow's vicinity, as though physically bound to the horse by invisible tethers. Arthur sighed, the events of the day weighing heavily on his shoulders. It runs in her family. Her mother had this ability to connect with animals beyond normal human perception, but never this strong, never this immediate. With cautious movements, Arthur approached Shadow's head, focusing on the small metallic device partially hidden behind the horse's ear. Now that they had the animal relatively calm and in good light, he could examine it properly for the first time. This is definitely A-era technology, he said, not touching the device but leaning close enough to identify the subtle logo etched into its surface. And look here, these markings. Alex peered over Arthur's shoulder. S7NF. Nathan Foster, Arthur confirmed grimly. My son-in-law's initials. This was his project. Shadow tossed his head restlessly, preventing further examination. Arthur stepped back, respecting the animal's boundaries. Whatever this device does, it's integrated with his neural pathways. Removing it improperly could cause serious damage. He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture of frustration. I need to know more about how it functions before I attempt anything. And Reed wants it back badly enough to bring in a tactical team. Alex added, his military training evident in the way he continually assessed their security. They won't just walk away because the first attempt failed. Sus. Arthur moved to his desk, unlocking a drawer to retrieve an old leather journal. Nathan kept notes, not official research logs, but his personal observations. I've held on to them since he disappeared. He hesitated, then added, there might be something in here about the device, or about Project Harmonic. Before he could open the journal, the clinic door swung open. Sheriff Walker entered, her expression a mixture of concern and professional alertness. You've had quite a morning from what I hear, she said, eyeing the black Mustang with cautious respect. Half the valley's talking about how Emma Riley walked a wild horse right past Reed's capture team like she was leading a parade pony. News travels fast, Arthur replied dryly. Small towns, Walker shrugged, especially when mysterious government types start deploying sonic equipment that makes every dog in a 5-mile radius howl. She approached Shadow's stall cautiously. So this is our notorious livestock attacker. We don't know that for certain, Arthur said. But yes, this is Shadow. The sheriff studied the horse with a professional eye. That device behind his ear, that's what Reed's team is after. Arthur nodded. It's some kind of neural interface. Nathan's design, apparently. Which brings me to my next point, Walker said, turning back to face them. Reed has filed official paperwork claiming ownership of the horse as escaped research property. He's seeking an emergency court order for seizure. He can't do that, Arthur protested. Wild Mustangs are protected under federal law, and he's claiming this isn't a wild Mustang anymore. It's a modified research subject that escaped from a secured facility. Walker's expression revealed her distaste for the argument. I'm stalling the paperwork, but he's got connections. It won't hold for long. Alex had been watching Shadow during this exchange. The horse understands what we're saying, he observed quietly. Look at his ears, his eye movements. He's following the conversation. All three adults turned to look at Shadow, who stared back with unnervingly focused attention. The neural interface must enhance cognitive functions, Arthur murmured. Nathan theorized that animals already understand more human language than we give them credit for. The interface might amplify that capacity. A soft sound from the doorway drew their attention. Emma stood there, her notebook clutched to her chest, her solemn eyes moving from the adults to Shadow and back again. Emma, Arthur said gently, we're just discussing how to help Shadow. The girl approached the stall without hesitation. Shadow immediately softened his posture, lowering his head to greet her. Emma placed her palm against his muzzle, and that same strange stillness they had witnessed in Eagle's Hollow descended briefly over the clinic, not complete silence, but a subtle shift in the acoustic environment, as though background noise receded to create space for an inaudible communication. After a moment, Emma opened her notebook, showing them a new drawing. It depicted Shadow with the device behind his ear, surrounded by those same mysterious symbols she had been drawing for weeks. But now there was something new, a human figure standing opposite the horse with identical symbols flowing between them. Is that you? Arthur asked. Emma shook her head and pointed to a small photograph on Arthur's desk, Nathan Foster. The implications hung heavy in the air. Before anyone could respond, another visitor appeared in the doorway, a woman in her early 40s with intelligent eyes and a precise manner that marked her as a fellow scientist. Forgive the intrusion, she said, surveying the room with quick assessment. I'm Dr. Olivia Chen. I've been looking for you, Dr. Riley. Arthur's expression closed. Another AERA representative. Former AERA, she corrected, entering cautiously. I worked with your son-in-law. May I come in? I believe I can help explain what's happening. While Sheriff Walker returned to town to continue delaying Reed's legal maneuvers, Arthur, Alex, and Dr. Chen gathered around the clinic's small break room table. Emma remained with Shadow, seemingly content to sit quietly beside the stall, drawing in her notebook. I was part of the original Harmonic Project team, Olivia explained, accepting the coffee Arthur offered. A neurologist specializing in cross-species brain pattern analysis. Nathan and I work closely on the interface technology. Until the fire, Arthur said, his voice tight with controlled emotion. Olivia's expression darkened. The laboratory fire was staged, Dr. Riley. Nathan discovered something about the project, something Reed had been hiding from most of the research team. What? Arthur leaned forward. Reed had secured military funding to weaponize the harmonic technology. She glanced toward the clinic area where Shadow stood. The neural interface was never meant just for communication or medical applications. Reed envisioned it as a method for remote influence, controlling animal behavior, for reconnaissance, surveillance, even attack purposes. Mind control, Alex translated bluntly. Neural pathway guidance, Olivia corrected. But yes, essentially directing behavior through harmonic frequency manipulation. Arthur's face had gone pale. And Nathan discovered this. He discovered worse. Olivia lowered her voice further. Reed had begun unauthorized human testing. The silence that followed was heavy with implication. Nathan threatened to expose everything, she continued. The next day, there was a tragic laboratory accident, and Nathan was presumed dead in the fire. But you don't believe he died, Arthur stated rather than asked. Olivia shook her head. I believe Nathan took critical research and went into hiding. The interface Shadow is wearing, it's not the military version. It's Nathan's original design, modified for protection rather than control. Protection from what? Alex asked. From Reed's sonic disruption technology. Olivia pulled out a tablet displaying schematics of a device similar to what they had seen at Eagle's Hollow. These emit harmonic frequencies that can override normal brain function in any mammal within range. But Nathan's interface creates a firewall of sorts. It helps the wearer resist external influence. Arthur leaned back, processing this information. If what you're saying is true, why would Nathan put his protective device on a wild horse rather than use it himself? I don't know, Olivia admitted, but I do know that Shadow isn't just any horse. He's special, specifically bred by Era for enhanced cognitive capabilities. He escaped during the chaos of the laboratory fire. Alex, who had been listening intently, spoke up. How do we know we can trust you? You could be working for Reed trying to gain our confidence. Olivia met his gaze steadily. A fair question. I can only offer this. She reached into her bag and extracted a sealed envelope, handing it to Arthur. Nathan left this with me before he disappeared. He said to give it to you if anything happened to him or if S7 found his way home. Arthur stared at the envelope, recognizing Nathan's handwriting. With slightly trembling fingers, he broke the seal and removed a single page. As he read, his expression shifted from suspicion to stunned comprehension. Arthur, Alex prompted when the silence stretched too long. It's coordinates, Arthur finally said. And a message. The answers are where we began. If Shadow finds Emma, the connection is real. Trust Olivia. Trust no one else. Coordinates to what? Alex asked. Arthur looked up, his eyes distant with memory. To a cabin in the mountains, where Nathan first discovered the harmonic frequencies that started everything. And went on. Reed paced the perimeter of the hotel room that had been converted into a temporary command center. Screens displayed satellite imagery of Arthur's clinic thermal signatures, indicating the presence of the horse and several humans inside. The court order is being delayed, reported one of his assistants. Sheriff Walker is insisting on verification of ownership documentation. Local interference, Reed muttered. Predictable but annoying. He turned to the technician monitoring the surveillance feeds. Any unusual activities or frequencies from the target? Nothing since the incident at Eagles Hollow, sir. The interface appears to be in passive mode. Reed nodded absently, his mind working through contingencies. S7 was valuable, but now secondary to his newly discovered priority, Emma Foster. A natural speaker, possibly the most powerful they had ever encountered. The potential applications were extraordinary. His phone rang, a secure line used only for the most sensitive communications. Reed, he answered curtly. The voice on the other end was clinical feminine. Subject E1 is showing decreased response to standard protocols. Cognitive decline has accelerated in the past 24 hours. Reed's professional demeanor cracked slightly. Increase the harmonic maintenance to level 4 and prepare for my arrival tomorrow. Level 4 exceeds safe parameters for extended use, Director. I'm aware of the risks, he snapped. Just do it. After ending the call, Reed moved to the window, staring out at the drought-stricken valley with unseeing eyes. On a nearby desk lay a framed photograph of a younger Reed with a beautiful woman, Eliza Foster, once Nathan's research partner, now Reed's wife. In the photo, her eyes sparkled with intelligence and warmth. The image stood in stark contrast to the vacant-eyed woman, now confined to Era's medical facility. 2 months, Reed murmured to the photograph. I promised I'd find a way to bring you back, whatever it takes. With renewed determination, he turned back to his team. Prepare the secondary extraction plan. If the legal approach fails, we move tonight. Emma sat beside Shadow's stall, her notebook open to a fresh page. Instead of drawing, however, she simply rested her hand on the horse's neck, her eyes closed in concentration. Since their connection at Eagles Hollow, something had changed within her mind. The images and impressions that had once been fragmented and confusing now formed coherent thoughts, not words exactly, but clear concepts that flowed between them like a silent conversation. Shadow showed her visions of a sterile laboratory of men in white coats of escape through mountain forests. He shared the sensation of the device being attached behind his ear, not painfully but with gentle hands and soothing words, from a man she recognized as her father. In return, Emma shared her own memories, the suffocating smoke of the fire that had supposedly claimed her father's life, the silence that had descended upon her afterward, the drawings that had come unbidden to her mind for weeks. Shadow's consciousness brushed against hers with a question that needed no translation. "Why can't you speak?" Emma's hand tightened slightly on his neck. "The words are trapped," she thought back, locked away with the smoke and the fear. The horse nudged her gently with his muzzle. "But you speak to me. This is different. This isn't words." She felt Shadow's understanding, a warm current of empathy that flowed between them. Then he shared something unexpected, an image of a woman with Emma's eyes standing in a white room, her gaze unfocused, a small device visible behind her ear. Emma gasped, pulling her hand away. The connection broke abruptly, leaving her dizzy with the implications of what she had seen. "Mum." Arthur spread Nathan's old maps across his desk, comparing them with the coordinates from the letter. "It's deep in the national forest, miles from any marked trail," he explained to Alex and Olivia, "a research cabin Nathan used during the early days of the project." "You've been there?" Alex asked. "Once years ago. It's isolated deliberately so. Nathan needed undisturbed acoustic environments for his harmonic research." Arthur traced a route with his finger. "The terrain is challenging. Steep ridges, dense forest, not easily accessible, which makes it perfect for hiding sensitive information," Olivia observed. Alex studied the map with a ranger's practiced eye. "There's a problem. This section here," he indicated a valley between their location and the cabin, "isn't passable anymore. Rockslide 3 years ago changed the whole landscape. We'll need to find another route." Arthur frowned. "That adds miles to an already difficult journey." "Tonatonum. If Reed knows about the cabin, he might already have people there," Alex pointed out. "Nathan was careful," Olivia said. "The cabin doesn't appear in any official era records. Reed may suspect its existence, but he doesn't know its location." A soft tapping drew their attention. Emma stood in the doorway, her face unusually pale. She crossed to Arthur's desk and placed her notebook before them, open to a new drawing. A woman with vacant eyes, a device behind her ear, identical to Shadow's. "Emma, what is this?" Arthur asked gently. The girl pointed to the framed photograph of Nathan that Arthur kept on his desk, then to the woman in the drawing. "Eliza," Arthur's voice cracked slightly. "You're drawing Eliza Foster." Emma nodded, then pointed to Shadow and back to the drawing, trying to convey the connection. Olivia leaned forward, studying the drawing with dawning comprehension. "She's saying Shadow showed her this image of Eliza. Should it mean?" She looked up at Arthur with grave concern. "If that's true, and if this drawing is current, then my daughter is alive." Arthur finished, his voice barely above a whisper, "and under Reed's control." The implications hung heavy in the room. Arthur turned to Emma, placing his hands gently on her shoulders. "Emma, are you certain? Did Shadow show you this?" The girl nodded emphatically, then made a series of gestures, pointing to her head to Shadow, to the map on the desk, and finally making a motion like turning a key. "I think she's saying Shadow knows how to help her mother," Olivia interpreted. "And the answers are at the cabin." Arthur's expression hardened with resolve. "Then we need to get to that cabin. Tonight." As twilight descended over the valley, preparations for their covert journey were nearly complete. Arthur had packed essential medical supplies, both for Shadow's wound and for any other emergencies they might encounter. Alex had mapped an alternate route to the cabin, though it would require navigating difficult terrain and limited light. The question of whether Shadow should accompany them had been settled by the horse himself. He refused to be separated from Emma, becoming dangerously agitated whenever they attempted to secure him in the clinic. "He'll slow us down," Alex pointed out as they loaded supplies into his rugged all-terrain vehicle. "We don't have a choice," Arthur replied. "Whatever Nathan hid at that cabin, I suspect Shadow is part of the key to accessing it." Sheriff Walker arrived as they were finishing preparations, her expression grim. "Reed's gotten his court order. They'll be here at first light with federal marshals to seize the horse. Then we need to be well away by dawn," Arthur said. Walker nodded, then handed him a satellite phone. "Take this. It's secure and works in areas with no cell coverage. I programmed my direct line." She glanced toward the clinic where Emma was with Shadow. "Be careful, Arthur. Reed isn't just a scientist anymore. He's running some kind of black ops research program with serious backing." "Will you be all right?" Arthur asked. When they discover we're gone, the sheriff's mouth quirked in a half-smile. I've dealt with federal overreach before. I can keep them tangled in jurisdictional red tape for at least a day. After that, she shrugged, just find what you need and contact me. As Walker departed, Olivia approached with final provisions. I've packed additional supplements for Shadow. The interface draws energy from his system. He'll need extra calories to maintain strength. Arthur studied her face in the fading light. Why are you helping us, Doctor? Chen, really, you're risking your career, possibly more. Olivia's expression softened with what might have been grief. Nathan was more than a colleague to me. He believed in using science to heal, not harm. When Reed changed the direction of the project, Nathan refused to compromise his principles. She glanced toward Emma. And when Reed began the unauthorized human testing, Nathan actively sabotaged the military applications. Human testing, Arthur repeated. On who? Volunteers officially, terminal patients hoping for neural regeneration. She hesitated. But there were others, including Eliza. Arthur's expression darkened. What did they do to my daughter? I don't know the full extent. Nathan discovered it by accident, found records of procedures performed without proper consent or oversight. Olivia's voice dropped. Whatever they did, it changed her. Nathan was desperate to reverse the effects, to find a way to break Reed's control. And now Reed has her. The anguish in Arthur's voice was palpable. Yes, after Nathan's death, Reed married Eliza within months. He claimed it was what Nathan would have wanted, someone to care for her and continue their work. Olivia's disgust was evident. He uses her condition to justify everything, the military contracts, the ethical violations, all of it. Their conversation was interrupted by Emma emerging from the clinic shadow, following behind her like a massive shadow. The wild horse was now equipped with a hastily modified halter that allowed Emma to guide him without restricting his movement. Are we ready? Alex asked, completing a final check of their gear. Arthur nodded, his expression resolute. Let's go find some answers. The journey began under cover of darkness, their small convoy leaving Arthur's property via a rarely used access road that skirted the main highway. Alex drove the lead vehicle with Arthur and Olivia, while Emma rode Shadow alongside them, the horse moving with surprising quietness for his size. As they left the valley behind and entered the foothills of the Sierra Nevada range, the drought-stricken landscape gave way to denser vegetation, fed by mountain springs. The air grew cooler, carrying the scent of pine and cedar. We'll need to leave the vehicle soon, Alex announced as the trail narrowed. From here, it's on foot or hoof, he added with a glance at Shadow. They established a small base camp beside a secluded stream, securing their supplies before continuing on the more arduous portion of the journey. Shadow drank deeply from the clear water, his wound showing no signs of infection, thanks to Arthur's careful treatment. Emma should rest before we continue, Arthur suggested, noticing his granddaughter's fatigue, despite her determined demeanor. The girl shook her head firmly, pointing up the trail. Through their silent connection, Shadow apparently understood her urgency. He nudged her shoulder gently with his muzzle, then lowered himself in a clear invitation for her to mount. I don't think he's ever been ridden, Olivia observed with surprise. He hasn't, Arthur confirmed. Wild Mustangs don't offer their backs willingly, especially to humans. Yet Shadow remained patiently positioned, waiting for Emma to climb onto his bare back. With Arthur's help, she did so, settling comfortably despite the absence of a saddle. Extraordinary, Olivia murmured. The harmonic connection must extend to physical trust as well. With Emma mounted on Shadow, they made better progress along the difficult trail. The horse navigated the terrain with confidence, sometimes choosing paths different from those Alex initially selected, but always finding secure footing. He knows where we're going, Alex observed after Shadow diverted them around a section of trail that upon closer inspection showed signs of recent instability. Better than our maps. As they climbed higher into the mountains, the first hints of dawn began to lighten the eastern sky. They had traveled through the night, putting miles between themselves and the inevitable discovery of their departure. We should be approaching the ridge overlooking the cabin site, Arthur said, consulting Nathan's map. Another hour, maybe less. A sudden change in Shadow's demeanor halted their progress. The horse froze, ears pricked forward, nostrils flaring as he tested the air. Emma leaned forward against his neck, her expression growing concerned as she shared his awareness. What is it? Alex asked, instantly alert to potential danger. Emma slid from Shadow's back, grabbing her notebook to draw rapidly. She sketched a crude representation of men in tactical gear positioned around a small structure in the distance. Someone's already at the cabin, Arthur interpreted. But how the location wasn't in any official records? Olivia's face paled. Chen, she whispered. Dr. Chen must have known. Arthur turned to her sharply. What? Dr. Olivia Chen died 6 months ago, she admitted. Heart failure. I borrowed her identity to approach you. I worked at ERA in a different capacity, but I knew about the project about Nathan's concerns. She met Arthur's accusing stare directly. I couldn't tell you the truth initially. I needed to be sure you weren't part of Reed's inner circle. Who are you? Alex demanded, his hand moving subtly toward the sidearm concealed under his jacket. My name is Dr. Jessica Winters. I was Nathan's research assistant in the early days before the military contracts. I've been tracking S7 Shadow since his escape, hoping he would lead me to whatever Nathan hid. Arthur's expression hardened. You've been lying to us from the beginning. Not about what matters, she insisted. Everything I told you about Reed, about the project, about Nathan's disappearance, it's all true. I just couldn't risk Reed's people discovering I was helping you. And now Reed's team has found the cabin anyway, Alex observed grimly. Not Reed's team, Jessica corrected. Look at how they're positioned, too spread out, no standard tactical formation. They're not military or private security. Alex studied Emma's drawing more carefully. You're right, this looks more like local militia, Arthur finished. Reed must have hired additional security when he realized the importance of Shadow. Probably former military contractors. Emma tugged at Arthur's sleeve, pointing urgently at the rising sun. Time was running out both for their mission and for their head start on Reed's official team. We need a diversion, Alex decided, assessing their options. Draw them away from the cabin long enough for you to get inside. Too risky, Arthur objected. We don't know how many there are or how they're armed. Shadow snorted, pawing at the ground impatiently. Emma placed her hand on his neck, closing her eyes briefly in that now familiar gesture of silent communication. When she opened them, she pointed to Shadow, then to herself, and finally to a ridge overlooking the cabin. No, Arthur said immediately. Absolutely not. You are not using yourself as bait, Emma. The girl's expression grew stubborn. She gestured again, more emphatically, then wrote in her notebook, Shadow knows what to do. Emma. She tore out the page and wrote again, larger, trust us. Arthur looked from his granddaughter to the wild horse that had somehow formed an inexplicable bond with her. The determination in both their eyes was identical. We'll create a small diversion from the west, Alex suggested, finding a compromise. Just enough noise to draw attention, but not enough to suggest a full approach. If Shadow and Emma can use that moment to access the cabin from the eastern ridge. Arthur still hesitated, the protective instinct of a grandfather, warring with the urgent need to discover what Nathan had hidden. Emma approached him, taking his hand in her small one. With her other hand, she touched the photograph of Nathan that Arthur kept in his pocket. Her eyes conveyed what her voice could not. Dad trusted me. Trust me too. All right, Arthur finally conceded. But at the first sign of real danger, you get away from there. Promise me, Emma. She nodded solemnly, then turned to Shadow with newfound purpose. The horse lowered himself again, allowing her to mount with graceful ease that belied their brief partnership. 20 minutes, Alex instructed, checking his watch. Give us 20 minutes to get into position, then make your move when you hear the diversion. As they prepared to separate, Jessica approached Emma hesitantly. Your father believed in you, she said softly. He knew you were special, that you had the gift. Whatever's in that cabin, he meant for you to find it. Emma studied the woman who had deceived them, yet whose eyes now held unmistakable sincerity. After a moment, she nodded in acknowledgement, then turned Shadow toward the eastern approach. Be careful, Arthur called after her, his voice thick with emotion. Both of you. Emma looked back once, her solemn expression briefly transformed by a flash of determination that reminded Arthur powerfully of Nathan at his most resolute. Then she leaned forward against Shadow's neck, and the horse carried her silently into the forest, two dark silhouettes merging with the pre-dawn shadows. The cabin stood in a small clearing, its weathered timber walls nearly indistinguishable from the surrounding forest. From their vantage point on the eastern ridge, Emma and Shadow observed the men positioned around the structure, 4 visible sentries with communications equipment and what appeared to be hunting rifles rather than military-grade weapons. Emma stroked Shadow's neck, formulating their approach through the wordless communication they now shared with increasing fluency. The horse's acute senses detected the positions of all the guards, including one hidden in the trees behind the cabin. We wait for the signal, Emma thought, feeling Shadow's acknowledgement like a warm current flowing between them. Minutes passed in tense silence. Then from the western slope came the sound of breaking branches and rolling stones, a convincing simulation of someone moving clumsily through the underbrush. The sentries reacted immediately, 2 moving toward the disturbance, while the others maintained watch on the cabin. It wasn't enough of an opening. Emma frowned, considering their options. Shadow's ears flicked back and forth, processing sounds beyond human hearing range. Suddenly, his muscles tensed beneath her. Someone else is coming, his awareness conveyed to her. From the north, many feet. Emma peered in that direction but could see nothing through the dense trees. Shadow was certain, however, reinforcements were approaching. Likely Reed's official team, having followed their trail more quickly than anticipated. Their window of opportunity was closing rapidly. If they waited for a better diversion, they might lose their chance entirely. Emma made a decision. Sliding from Shadow's back, she pointed to the southern perimeter of the clearing, then made a circular motion with her finger. Shadow understood immediately. With a soft snort of acknowledgement, he moved away through the trees, circling to approach the cabin from the opposite direction. Emma waited, counting silently in her mind. When she reached 30, Shadow burst from the tree line to the south, rearing dramatically and charging directly at the 2 remaining sentries. The men scattered, shouting warnings into their radios as the massive black horse created chaotic distraction. It was the opening Emma needed. While all attention focused on Shadow, she darted from the eastern ridge to the cabin's back entrance, moving with the silent quickness of a child accustomed to going unnoticed. The cabin door was secured with a simple padlock that had already been broken by the sentry's earlier entry. Emma slipped inside, finding herself in a small, dusty room that smelled of abandonment and pine. Sunlight filtered through grimy windows, illuminating floating dust motes and sparse furniture covered with protective sheets. Working quickly, Emma examined the main room. There was little to see: basic furnishings, old research equipment, shelves of technical books. Nothing that seemed worth protecting or hiding. Outside, she could hear continued commotion as Shadow led the sentries on a wild chase around the perimeter. But the diversion wouldn't last long, especially if the approaching reinforcements arrived. Frustration building, Emma moved to a small desk in the corner. It too had been searched, its drawers pulled open and contents disarrayed. She was about to turn away when she noticed something: the desk's surface dimensions didn't match its interior storage space. Pushing aside scattered papers, Emma examined the wooden desktop more carefully. Near the back edge, almost imperceptible, was a small circular indentation. The same circle and dot symbol she had been drawing for weeks. Without hesitation, Emma pressed her thumb against the indentation. Nothing happened. She frowned, considering, then tried again, this time closing her eyes and focusing her mind the way she did when connecting with Shadow. A soft click rewarded her effort. A hidden compartment in the desk slid open, revealing a small metallic device similar to an external hard drive along with a handwritten note. For Emma, if you're reading this, you've discovered your gift. Shadow will protect you until we meet again. Trust only those he trusts. The truth is in the harmonic key. Dad. Emma clutched the device to her chest, emotions threatening to overwhelm her. Her father had known, had prepared for this moment, had believed in her ability to find this place. A sharp whistle from outside interrupted her thoughts, Alex's signal that time was running out. Emma tucked the device and notes securely into her jacket and moved toward the door. As she reached it, voices approached from outside, unfamiliar, professional-sounding voices. Reed's team had arrived. Secure the perimeter. I want the cabin searched again before Reed gets here. Emma froze, caught between her exit and the approaching men. Frantically, she looked for another way out, but the cabin's only other exit was a window too small for even her to squeeze through. A sudden commotion erupted outside, shouts of surprise, the sound of running feet. Then impossibly, Shadow appeared at the back door, somehow having circled around the reinforcements. The horse pawed at the ground urgently, his intention clear. Now quickly, Emma didn't hesitate. She darted out the door and onto Shadow's back in one fluid movement. The horse pivoted immediately, carrying her away from the cabin as shouts and confusion multiplied behind them. As they crested the eastern ridge, Emma caught sight of Arthur, Alex, and Jessica making their own escape through the dense forest to the north. Shadow adjusted course to intercept them, moving with remarkable stealth despite his size. "Did you find anything?" Arthur asked breathlessly when they reunited. Emma nodded, patting her jacket where the device was secured. "Then let's get out of here," Alex urged, leading them toward a ravine that would provide cover for their retreat. "Reed's people are swarming the area." As they moved deeper into the forest, Emma leaned forward against Shadow's neck, her mind filled with questions about the device she carried and the message from her father. But one thought burned brighter than all others: Dad is alive, and he knew I would find him. Shadow's consciousness brushed against hers with warm reassurance as they fled through the mountain wilderness, carrying the key to secrets that had remained hidden for 18 long months. Rain fell in heavy sheets across the mountain landscape, an unprecedented storm that had materialized seemingly from nowhere after months of drought. The small group huddled beneath a rocky overhang, taking shelter from the downpour that transformed dry creek beds into rushing torrents within hours. Shadow stood at the edge of their shelter, his powerful form silhouetted against the gray curtain of rain. The storm didn't appear to bother him. Rather, he seemed to welcome it, occasionally extending his neck to let the water cascade over his mane. The wound on his flank was healing well, pink scar tissue already forming beneath Arthur's careful bandaging. "This weather will cover our tracks," Alex observed, checking the satellite phone Sheriff Walker had provided. "But it also makes the terrain more dangerous. Flash floods, mudslides, these mountains get treacherous in heavy rain." Arthur nodded grimly, his attention focused on the small device Emma had retrieved from the cabin. It resembled an external hard drive, but featured no obvious ports or connectors, just a smooth metallic surface with the now familiar circular symbol etched into its center. "Nathan always did like his security measures," he muttered, turning the device over in his hands. "Any ideas?" he asked Jessica, who examined it with equal curiosity. "It appears to be a custom design," she replied, "possibly biometrically secured given Nathan's other projects. But without the right equipment to analyze it—" Emma approached, holding out her hand for the device. Arthur passed it to her, watching closely as she traced the circular symbol with her finger, then closed her eyes in the now familiar gesture of concentration she used when communicating with Shadow. Nothing happened. The girl frowned, trying again. Still, the device remained inert. "Maybe it needs to be connected to something," Arthur suggested. "Or maybe it responds to a specific harmonic frequency. Like the one Shadow's interface generates," Jessica proposed, glancing toward the horse. Emma's eyes widened with sudden understanding. She gestured excitedly for Arthur to follow her to Shadow's side. "You think the interface is the key?" Arthur asked, comprehension dawning. Emma nodded, reaching up to carefully examine the device behind Shadow's ear. In the weeks since they had first encountered the wild horse, the interface had become less visible, integrating more seamlessly with his flesh, as though becoming part of him. Gently, Emma held Nathan's device near Shadow's interface. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, as she adjusted the position slightly, a soft hum emanated from both devices, a harmonic resonance that seemed to bridge the space between them. The hard drive's surface illuminated with a subtle blue glow, and a holographic projection appeared above it, a three-dimensional model of a human brain overlaid with intricate patterns of light that pulsed in rhythmic sequences. "Neural mapping," Jessica breathed, approaching cautiously. "Incredibly detailed. I've never seen resolution this precise." Arthur studied the projection with professional interest. "It's showing synchronization patterns across different regions, like a visual representation of thoughts forming." The projection shifted, zooming in on a particular region, before expanding to display a split-screen comparison, two brain patterns side by side, one human, one equine, with connecting lines highlighting areas of synchronization. "This is what Nathan discovered." Jessica realized, her voice hushed with awe. "Not just communication between species, but actual neural synchronization, sharing of thought patterns, memories, even emotional states." Emma touched the device again, and the projection changed to display a video recording. Nathan Foster's face appeared, looking more haggard than in the photographs Emma knew, but unmistakably alive. "If you're viewing this, Emma has found her way to the cabin." Nathan began, his voice bringing tears to Emma's eyes. And she's discovered her gift, the ability to form harmonic connections that I've spent years trying to replicate technologically. Arthur moved closer to Emma, placing a supportive hand on her shoulder as they watched. What began as research into cross-species communication evolved into something far more profound, Nathan continued. The interface technology was meant to help us understand these natural connections, to perhaps help those without the innate ability to experience this form of communication. The recording showed laboratory footage of early experiments, animals responding to subtle harmonic frequencies, demonstrating increased cognitive functions and emotional responses. But Reed saw different applications, military applications, and worse, he began unauthorized testing on human subjects. Nathan's expression darkened. When I discovered what he was doing to your mother, Emma, I confronted him. He'd been using her as a test subject for a more invasive version of the interface, one designed not to facilitate communication, but to control. Emma's small body tensed beneath Arthur's hand. I staged the laboratory fire to cover my escape with critical research data, Nathan explained. I had to find a way to counteract Reed's technology to free your mother and others from his influence. Shadow designation S7 in the laboratory escaped during the chaos. He was the only successful recipient of my protective interface designed to resist the harmonic control frequencies. The recording shifted to show Nathan working in what appeared to be a makeshift laboratory different from the cabin. I've been developing a counter-frequency, a harmonic key that can disrupt Reed's control interface without harming the neural tissue. Shadow's interface contains the prototype algorithm, but I needed more time to perfect it. Nathan looked directly into the camera as though making eye contact with Emma across time and distance. I couldn't risk contacting you directly. Reed watches too closely. But I knew that if Shadow found you, if the harmonic connection formed naturally between you, it would confirm my theory. The projection displayed a complex waveform pattern, rotating slowly in 3 dimensions. This is the key, Emma. Your natural harmonic frequency amplified through Shadow's interface can break Reed's control. It can free your mother. Nathan's voice cracked slightly. I'm so sorry I had to leave you, sweetheart. I never wanted to cause you pain. But Reed left me no choice. The recording ended with coordinates appearing beneath Nathan's image, different from those that had led them to the cabin. A second location, Arthur murmured quickly, noting the numbers, deeper in the mountains. Alex studied the coordinates on their map. It's an old mining area, abandoned decades ago, remote, isolated from radio interference, ideal for harmonic research. Emma turned to Arthur, her eyes shining with desperate hope and determination. She didn't need words to communicate her intention. They had to find Nathan, had to use this harmonic key to free her mother. It's at least a day's journey in good conditions, Alex cautioned, eyeing the continuing downpour. With this weather, we don't have a choice, Arthur said firmly. Reed won't stop hunting us, and now we know why this technology represents both a tremendous threat to his work and the only hope for those under his control. Emma approached Shadow, resting her forehead against his muzzle in their gesture of connection. After a moment, she turned back to the others and nodded decisively. Shadow could guide them even through the storm. He would find the way. Jessica had been studying the projected data with growing concern. There's something else we need to consider, she said. If I'm interpreting these neural patterns correctly, prolonged use of Reed's control interface causes progressive degradation of autonomous brain function. The longer someone remains under influence, the less likely recovery becomes, Arthur finished grimly. How long has Eliza been under his control? At least 18 months, Jessica confirmed, since shortly after Nathan's disappearance. The implication hung heavy in the air. They were racing not just against Reed and his forces, but against time itself. Emma clutched Nathan's device tightly, her expression setting into the same stubborn determination they had seen at Eagle's Hollow. She mounted Shadow with practiced ease, and the horse turned toward the trail, ready to lead them deeper into the storm-lashed mountains. Reed paced the cabin's interior, his customary composure fraying visibly as he surveyed the search team's efforts. Nothing, he demanded. All this specialized equipment, and you find nothing. The team leader shook his head apologetically. Sir, we've scanned every inch, checked for hidden compartments, ran full spectral analysis. Whatever was here has been removed. Reed slammed his fist against the desk, the same desk where Emma had discovered the hidden compartment hours earlier. She was here. A 10-year-old child found what all your technology couldn't. His phone rang the same secure line that had delivered the troubling update about Eliza the previous day. Reed answered immediately, moving away from his team for privacy. Report. Subject E1's condition has deteriorated significantly despite level 4 maintenance, came the clinical response. Neural patterns show increasing instability. Estimated functional window has decreased to less than 48 hours. Reed closed his eyes briefly, mastering the surge of emotion that threatened his carefully maintained control. Prepare for emergency protocol Omega. I'm bringing in an alternative solution. Sir, Protocol Omega has never been tested on. I'm aware of the risks, Reed interrupted sharply. Just be ready. Ending the call, he rejoined his team with renewed urgency. Expand the search radius. Use the sonic detection array. If S7's interface is active anywhere within 50 miles, I want it located. As his team mobilized, Reed approached the cabin window, staring out at the unexpected storm that complicated their efforts. His reflection in the rain-streaked glass showed a man transformed by desperation, no longer the confident scientist, but someone driven to the edge by forces beyond his control. "Where are you, Nathan?" he murmured. "Where did you hide the key?" The journey through the storm-battered wilderness tested their endurance to its limits. Trails became treacherous with mud and fallen debris, visibility reduced to mere yards in the heaviest downpours. Yet Shadow navigated the challenging terrain with uncanny precision, choosing paths that somehow remained stable despite the deluge. By nightfall, they had covered nearly half the distance to the coordinates, finding shelter in a small cave system that offered protection from both the elements and potential pursuit. Emma remained close to Shadow, their connection seemingly strengthened by the shared journey and common purpose. "She hasn't shown any signs of fatigue," Arthur observed to Alex as they established a small camp within the cave. "Most children her age would be overwhelmed by now." "She's running on determination," Alex replied. "I've seen it before, people accomplishing the impossible when someone they love is at stake." Jessica approached, having completed a careful examination of Nathan's device during their brief rest periods. "I've been analyzing the harmonic patterns," as she reported. "The counter frequency Nathan developed is remarkably sophisticated. It doesn't just block Reed's control signal, it actually helps restore autonomous neural function." "Will it be enough to help Eliza?" Arthur asked, the concern of a father evident beneath his professional interest. "Theoretically, yes, but implementation will be challenging." Jessica glanced toward Emma and Shadow. "It requires precise attunement to the subject's natural brainwave pattern, which is why Emma's connection with Shadow is so crucial. She can modulate the frequency intuitively in a way technology alone cannot." Their conversation was interrupted by Emma approaching with her notebook. She had drawn a detailed map of their remaining route with annotations indicating potential hazards and alternate paths. "Shadow showed you this?" Arthur asked, recognizing the landscape features that matched their topographical maps, but included details no official survey contained. Emma nodded, then added another drawing, a schematic representation of a facility built into the side of a mountain with multiple underground levels and security features marked. "AERA's research base," Jessica confirmed, studying the drawing with surprise. "But how could Shadow know the interior layout? The interface doesn't grant access to information he hasn't directly experienced." Emma pointed to Shadow, then to herself, then made a flowing gesture between them before pointing to the final drawing on the page, a human figure Arthur recognized immediately. "Nathan," he breathed. "You're saying Nathan has formed a harmonic connection with Shadow too, that he's sharing information through the horse?" Emma nodded emphatically. "A three-way connection," Jessica murmured. "I wouldn't have thought it possible, but if anyone could achieve it, Nathan always did push the boundaries of what we thought possible." Arthur said, a hint of pride warming his voice. "But this means he knows we're coming. He's actively helping guide us to him." Alex studied the facility schematic with tactical assessment. "If this layout is accurate, we're looking at a significantly hardened installation. Multiple security layers, limited access points, probably armed personnel." He glanced up. Getting in won't be easy. Getting out with Eliza could be impossible without inside help. Emma pointed again to the drawing of Nathan, her meaning clear. They would have help from within. As they finalized plans for the next day's journey, the storm outside began to diminish the torrential downpour, gradually subsiding to a steady, gentle rain. Arthur stepped to the cave entrance, surveying the clearing sky with cautious optimism. The storm's breaking, he observed. Should make tomorrow's travel easier. Also makes us easier to track, Alex cautioned. Arthur nodded his acknowledgement, returning his gaze to the night sky, where stars were beginning to appear between dissipating clouds. 18 months, he murmured. 18 months, I thought my son-in-law was dead, my daughter lost to grief. And all this time, you couldn't have known, Jessica said gently. I should have, Arthur replied, the weight of regret evident in his voice. I knew the risks of the project. I left because I saw where it could lead if misused. But I should have stayed, should have protected them. You protected Emma, Jessica reminded him, and now you're helping save them both. Arthur's response was interrupted by a soft sound from within the cave, a sound so unexpected that it momentarily froze everyone in place. A voice, Emma's voice, rusty from disuse but unmistakable. Grandpapa. Arthur turned to find Emma standing in the center of the cave. Shadow beside her, her hand resting on the horse's neck, as though drawing strength from the connection. Her expression showed equal parts surprise and determination, as she forced another word past the psychological barrier that had silenced her for 18 months. Help! Them! In 3 quick strides, Arthur crossed to his granddaughter, kneeling before her with tears gathering in his eyes. Emma, you're speaking. She nodded, her face concentrating with effort. Shadow showed me how. The words came haltingly, each one a victory over the trauma that had locked her voice away. Dad said, time to be brave. Arthur gathered her into a tight embrace, his professional composure finally breaking. You've always been brave, sweetheart. The bravest person I know. Over Arthur's shoulder, Emma met Shadow's intelligent gaze, a silent current of gratitude flowing between them. The horse had shown her the path through her own mental barriers, helping her reclaim her voice, just as they would soon attempt to help her mother reclaim her autonomy. Tomorrow, Emma whispered, her voice growing stronger with each word. We bring them home. Dawn broke clear and bright, the storm's passage leaving the mountain air washed clean and the forest glistening with moisture. They set out early, Shadow leading them along ridgelines and hidden valleys that offered both efficient progress and concealment from potential aerial surveillance. Emma rode Shadow with newfound confidence, occasionally practicing her returning speech in quiet conversations with Arthur. Though still halting and sometimes difficult, her voice strengthened with each passing hour, as though the act of breaking through one barrier had started a cascade of healing. By midday, they had reached the final approach to the coordinates Nathan had provided. The terrain grew increasingly rocky, remnants of the old mining operation, occasionally visible in abandoned equipment and collapsed tunnel entrances. The main facility must be integrated with the original mine infrastructure, Alex observed as they paused to survey the landscape ahead. Smart design, natural shielding from external signals, multiple emergency exits, geothermal energy potential. Jessica consulted the schematic Emma had drawn. According to this, the primary entrance is concealed in what appears to be a maintenance shed for the old mining equipment approximately half a mile ahead. Arthur checked their supplies one final time. Medical kit, Nathan's device, emergency provisions. We should assume Reed has been alerted to our approach, he cautioned. After the cabin, he'll have increased security. Emma, who had been in silent communication with Shadow, suddenly tugged at Arthur's sleeve. Dad says, clear, she managed her expression earnest. Reed, gone, gone, Arthur repeated. You mean he's not at the facility? Emma shook her head. Emergency, at main lab. Took most guards. Alex and Jessica exchanged cautious glances. Could be an opportunity, Alex acknowledged. Or a trap. Either way, it's our best chance, Arthur decided. If Reed truly has been called away, security will be reduced. And if Nathan is actively communicating through Shadow, then he's preparing for our arrival. Jessica finished. Perhaps creating a diversion? They approached the facility with cautious optimism, Shadow leading them along a path that avoided the most likely locations for surveillance equipment. As they neared the maintenance shed, Emma had identified the horse halted abruptly, ears pricked forward in alert attention. Before anyone could question the delay, the shed's weathered door swung open, revealing a man whose features Emma immediately recognized despite his unkempt appearance and the beard that now covered much of his face. "Dad?" she whispered, sliding from Shadow's back and taking an uncertain step forward. Nathan Foster stood frozen in the doorway, his eyes filling with tears, as he beheld his daughter speaking advancing toward him when he had feared she might never recover from the trauma he had inadvertently caused her. "Emma," he breathed, dropping to one knee and opening his arms. She ran to him, then the last vestiges of her silence shattering as she called out, "Dad," and threw herself into his embrace. For a long moment, father and daughter clung to each other, 18 months of separation and loss compressed into a single, healing connection. Shadow approached, nudging Nathan's shoulder gently in greeting, completing the triangle of their unique bond. Arthur watched the reunion with a complex mixture of emotions, joy for Emma, relief at finding Nathan alive, and an undercurrent of urgency that prevented full celebration. "Nathan," he finally said, drawing his son-in-law's attention. "Eliza." Nathan's expression sobered immediately. "Inside," he replied, rising with Emma still held close to his side. "But we have to hurry. Reed's absence gives us a narrow window." As they followed Nathan into the concealed entrance, descending into the facility via a service elevator, disguised as mining equipment, he quickly outlined the situation. "Reed left 4 hours ago, emergency protocol at the main Aera facility. Eliza's condition has deteriorated rapidly in the past 48 hours. Nathan's voice tightened with controlled emotion. "The neural degradation has accelerated beyond their ability to stabilize. The harmonic maintenance is failing," Jessica observed, "just as your research predicted." Nathan glanced at her curiously before recognition dawned. "Dr. Winters, I wondered if you had survived the purge after my death." "Barely," she confirmed. "I've been tracking Shadow since his escape, hoping he would lead me to you." Dewan. The elevator reached its destination, a surprisingly modern research level built within the expanded mine tunnels. Nathan led them swiftly through corridors that showed signs of long-term habitation, a small living quarter, a comprehensive laboratory monitoring stations with multiple screens displaying security feeds. "I've been preparing for this possibility for months," Nathan explained as they moved deeper into the facility, monitoring Aera communications, developing the counter frequency, waiting for the right moment. He squeezed Emma's hand. "Waiting for you to find your voice, both literally and harmonically." They reached a secure door at the end of the main corridor. Nathan entered a complex code, then submitted to a biometric scan. "Reed's arrogance works in our favor," he remarked as the door unlocked. "He never removed my access credentials, believing I was truly dead." The door opened to reveal a medical suite where a single patient lay on a specialized bed, surrounded by monitoring equipment. Eliza Foster's once vibrant presence had diminished to a pale shadow, thin, fragile. Her eyes open, but vacant, a more sophisticated version of Shadow's interface visible behind her ear. Emma gasped softly at the sight of her mother, instinctively moving forward, before Arthur gently restrained her. "Careful," Nathan cautioned. "She's under continuous harmonic influence. She won't recognize any of us in her current state." Arthur approached slowly, his medical training overriding emotional response as he assessed Eliza's condition. Significant muscle atrophy, probable neurological impairment. He observed clinically, though his voice betrayed the father beneath the doctor. "How long has she been like this?" "Reed began the experimental procedures shortly after our marriage," Nathan replied grimly, "using her grief over my death to manipulate her consent. When she began to question the research direction, he escalated to full neural control. She's been under complete influence for approximately 16 months. The interface is more invasive than Shadow's," Jessica noted, examining the device without touching it. "Direct neural integration rather than external influence." Nathan nodded, moving to a nearby console where he connected his own version of the device Emma had recovered from the cabin. Reed designed it for maximum control with minimal regard for long-term neural health. That's why the degradation has accelerated. Can your counter frequency reverse the damage? Arthur asked. Not alone, Nathan admitted. The algorithm provides the framework, but it requires precise attunement to Eliza's natural neural patterns. He turned to Emma. That's where you come in, sweetheart. Your natural harmonic ability amplified through Shadow's interface can guide the counter frequency to restore Eliza's autonomous function. Emma approached her mother's bedside, studying the vacant eyes that showed no recognition. How? She asked simply, her returning voice strengthened by determination. Nathan knelt beside her, explaining gently, the same way you connect with Shadow through touch, through intention. The harmonic link you form creates a bridge that the counter frequency can follow. Shadow moved to Emma's side, understanding his role without explanation. The horse positioned himself near Eliza's bed, lowering his head to bring his interface within proximity of hers. The procedure isn't without risk. Nathan warned, his scientific detachment warring with parental concern. If the frequency alignment isn't precise, it could accelerate the neural degradation rather than reverse it. Emma looked from her father to her grandfather, then back to her mother's empty gaze. I can do it, she said with quiet certainty. Arthur recognized the inevitable conclusion of their journey. Everything had led to this moment, this opportunity to heal what had been broken. We're all here with you, he assured Emma. You're not alone in this. Nathan initiated the procedure, activating the counter-frequency generator while monitoring Eliza's neural patterns on the adjacent screen. Whenever you're ready, Emma, he said softly. Emma took a deep breath, placing one hand on Shadow's neck and the other gently against her mother's cheek. She closed her eyes, focusing on the now familiar sensation of connection that flowed between her and the horse. For several moments, nothing visibly changed. Then, as Emma deepened her concentration, a subtle shift occurred in the atmosphere of the room. That same strange stillness they had witnessed at Eagle's Hollow descended, a quality of silence that seemed to exist between sounds rather than in their absence. On the monitoring screen, Eliza's neural patterns began to fluctuate previously dormant regions, showing increasing activity as the counter frequency found its path through Emma's harmonic connection. It's working, Nathan whispered, hardly daring to believe the readings. The degraded pathways are beginning to respond. Shadow remained perfectly still, his eyes half closed in concentration, as he served as the conduit between Emma's natural ability and the technological interface. The device behind his ear pulsed with soft blue light, synchronized to the counter frequency. Emma's face tensed with effort, small beads of sweat forming on her brow as she navigated the complex neural landscape. Through their connection, Shadow provided strength and stability, helping her maintain the delicate harmonic balance required. Neural autonomy increasing. Nathan reported, his voice tight with controlled hope. Artificial suppression patterns destabilizing. Arthur monitored Eliza's physical responses, heartbeat, respiration, muscle tension. She's responding, he confirmed. Autonomous nervous system showing increased activity. The process continued for long minutes, Emma swaying slightly with the intensity of her focus, but never breaking the connection. Shadow remained her anchor, his own consciousness intertwined with hers in ways that defied conventional understanding. Then, with a suddenness that startled everyone, Eliza gasped a deep, shuddering breath that seemed to fill long, empty spaces within her. Her eyes, previously vacant, blinked rapidly as awareness returned to their depths. Emma, Nathan urged, ease back gradually. Too sudden a transition could cause shock. Emma nodded slightly without opening her eyes, her connection with Shadow, allowing her to modulate the harmonic flow with intuitive precision. Slowly, the counter frequency reduced in intensity as Eliza's natural neural patterns reasserted themselves. Finally, Emma opened her eyes, exhaustion evident in her small frame, but determination undiminished. Mom, she whispered, her voice carrying all the hope and fear of the past 18 months. Eliza's gaze, confused at first, gradually focused on her daughter's face. Recognition dawned slowly, like sunshine breaking through clouds after a long storm. Emma. The word emerged hoarse and uncertain, Eliza's voice rusty from disuse, much as Emma's had been. My baby. Emma's composure broke, then tears streaming down her face as she leaned forward to embrace her mother. "Mom!" She sobbed the single word containing volumes of emotion. Nathan moved to their side, his own control finally surrendering to the moment as he gathered his wife and daughter in a protective embrace. "Eliza," he murmured against her hair. "You're back. You're really back." Arthur watched the reunion with tears in his own eyes, the physician in him, noting the medical miracle, while the father and grandfather allowed himself to fully experience the emotional one. "Remarkable," Jessica whispered beside him. "Complete neural reintegration. The harmonic connection actually accelerated the healing process beyond what the technology alone could achieve." Shadow had backed away slightly, giving the human family space for their reunion while maintaining his presence as silent guardian. His intelligent eyes watched the scene with what Arthur could only interpret as satisfaction. The moment of healing was interrupted by an urgent alarm from Nathan's security monitors. "Reed," he said sharply, checking the display. "He's returned earlier than expected. We have minutes at most." "Can Eliza be moved?" Arthur asked, immediately shifting to evacuation planning. Nathan nodded, already disconnecting monitoring equipment. "The counter-frequency has stabilized her autonomous functions. She's weak but mobile." "The northwest exit tunnel," Jessica suggested, referencing the schematic Emma had drawn. "It leads directly to the old ventilation shaft away from the main approach." Alex, who had been securing their perimeter, returned with urgent news. "Two vehicles approaching from the east. Tactical team configuration." Nathan helped Eliza to a sitting position, supporting her as she oriented herself to physical movement after months of neural suppression. "Emma, stay with your mother," he instructed. "Help her focus on physical sensations. It will strengthen her autonomy." As they prepared for evacuation, Shadow suddenly raised his head, ears pricked forward in alert attention. He pawed at the ground, snorting softly to gain Emma's attention. "What is it?" she asked, the connection between them instantly reestablished. The horse turned toward another door, one Nathan had not opened during their entry. His intention was clear, communicated silently to Emma through their harmonic link. "Shadow says, 'Another way,'" Emma translated her speech, growing more fluid with each passing minute. "Underground stream, tunnel to valley." Nathan looked surprised. "The old drainage system, but it was collapsed decades ago in the mine closure." Shadow's response, conveyed through Emma, was confident. "Recently, cleared. Water. Flowing again." The storm, Arthur realized. The heavy rainfall must have cleared the blockage. A decision had to be made quickly. Reed's team would secure all known exits first, but an unexpected escape route through a supposedly collapsed tunnel might provide the critical advantage they needed. "We trust Shadow," Emma said firmly, her hand on her mother's arm. "He knows the way." Nathan hesitated only briefly before nodding. "Let's go." They moved swiftly through the facility, Nathan supporting Eliza, while Alex took point and Arthur watched their rear. Emma and Shadow led the way with Jessica close behind, following the horse's confident guidance to a heavy maintenance door that hadn't been opened in years. The door protested with a rusty groan, but yielded to their combined strength. Beyond lay a rough-hewn tunnel that sloped downward into darkness, the sound of running water echoing from below. "It's flowing," Alex confirmed, shining his light into the passage. "Strong current, but not flooding. Navigable." As they prepared to enter the tunnel, the facility's main security doors initiated their lockdown sequence. Reed had arrived and was securing the installation. "No time for caution," Nathan urged, helping Eliza into the passage. "Everyone in now." They descended into the tunnel just as the first sounds of forced entry echoed from the main corridor. Shadow led them confidently through the darkness, his natural night vision guiding their path along the narrow ledge that bordered the underground stream. The journey through the mountain's heart was treacherous, slippery rocks, tight passages, the constant rush of water threatening to sweep away anyone who misstepped. Yet Shadow navigated with unwavering certainty, occasionally pausing to ensure the humans kept pace. After what seemed hours but was likely only 20 minutes, they detected a change in the air current freshness that suggested an opening ahead. The tunnel gradually widened, the ceiling rising as they approached what appeared to be a recent breakthrough, where the storm's fury had dislodged years of accumulated debris. "Daylight," Alex announced, pointing to a faint glow ahead. The stream exits to the valley. They emerged into the late afternoon sunlight, the underground stream joining a larger creek that flowed into the valley below. The exit was well concealed by natural rock formations and vegetation invisible from above, and sheltered from ground-level observation. "We need to keep moving," Nathan urged, though Eliza was clearly exhausted by even this limited exertion. "Reed will deploy search teams as soon as he confirms we're not in the facility." "Where?" Arthur asked practically. "They'll have the roads watched, probably aerial surveillance too." Emma, who had been in silent communication with Shadow, spoke up with newfound confidence. "Marie Eagleheart," she said. "Shadow says she'll help us." "The old medicine woman?" Arthur looked surprised. "Emma, no one's seen her in years. Most people think she's just a legend now." Shadow snorted, pawing the ground impatiently. His meaning transmitted through Emma was clear. Marie was very real, and she was exactly who they needed. "She lives in the high caves," Emma relayed. "Ancient place, safe from Reed's technology." Nathan considered this information with scientific skepticism, tempered by his experiences of the past 18 months. The limestone caverns in the northern ridge, they would provide natural shielding against sonic detection. And Marie Eagleheart was part of the original Whispering Pines tribe studies, Arthur recalled. She withdrew from the research when it began moving toward military applications. If anyone would help us against Reed. The decision made itself as a distant sound reached them, helicopter rotors approaching from the direction of the facility. Reed had escalated the search, deploying aerial resources sooner than anticipated. "Shadow will lead us," Emma declared with quiet authority, her hand resting on the horse's neck. "Marie is waiting." The storm that had passed through the mountains returned with unexpected ferocity as night fell, providing natural cover for their journey toward the northern ridges. Shadow led them along game trails and forgotten paths, avoiding open areas where Reed's search teams might spot them. Eliza grew stronger with each passing hour, her natural resilience asserting itself as the neural autonomy Emma had helped restore continued to strengthen. Though physically weakened by months of immobility, her mind showed remarkable recovery memories. Returning, personality reasserting, determination building. "The interface suppressed my conscious awareness," she explained during a brief rest period, sheltered beneath a rocky overhang as rain pounded the forest around them. "But part of me was always fighting, always searching for a way back." "Reed claimed he married you to continue Nathan's work," Arthur said, "to care for you after his death." Eliza's expression hardened. "Reed never cared for anyone but himself. The marriage was a legal maneuver to gain control of my research and medical decisions." She glanced at Nathan, pain evident in her eyes. "When I began questioning his methods, suspecting that Nathan might still be alive, he escalated the neural suppression." "You knew?" Nathan asked softly. "Somehow you knew I hadn't died." Eliza reached for his hand, their fingers intertwining with the familiarity of long partnership. "Not consciously, but in the spaces between Reed's control, I felt your presence. Like Emma with Shadow, a connection that transcended physical proximity." Their conversation paused as Shadow, who had been standing watch at the edge of their shelter, suddenly raised his head in alert attention. Emma immediately moved to his side, their silent communication flowing effortlessly now that she had regained her voice. "Someone coming," she reported after a moment. "Not Reed's people. A woman. Alone." As if summoned by her words, a figure emerged from the rain-drenched forest, an elderly woman moving with surprising agility. Despite her advanced years, her silver hair worn in long braids, her weathered face bearing the dignified lines of a life lived in harmony with the wilderness. Marie Eagleheart. Arthur breathed, recognizing the legendary medicine woman who had withdrawn from public life decades earlier. Marie approached without hesitation, her dark eyes taking in the group with ancient wisdom. "The speaker has found her voice," she observed, her attention focusing on Emma. "And Shadow has fulfilled his purpose as guide." Emma stepped forward, showing none of the shyness that might be expected. "You've been waiting for us," she said, recognizing the truth through her connection with Shadow. Marie nodded, a slight smile softening her stern features. "Since the Black Horse came to me 3 days ago, showing me visions of what was to come." She turned to Nathan and Eliza. "The harmony has been broken and restored. But the disruptor still seeks to silence the true music. Reed is searching for us, Nathan confirmed. His technology cannot reach where we are going. Marie completed his thought. The ancient places remember the original harmonies. They shield against false frequencies. She gestured for them to follow, leading them deeper into the storm-shrouded forest, with the confidence of one who had walked these paths for a lifetime. Shadow fell into step beside her, the two seeming to share an understanding that required no words or special interface. They traveled through the night, the rain gradually subsiding as they climbed higher into the northern ridges. By dawn, they had reached a series of limestone formations that rose like ancient sentinels from the mountainside. Marie led them to an opening partially concealed by vegetation, the entrance to a cave system that extended deep into the earth. "This is sacred ground," she informed them as they entered. "A place where my ancestors came to listen to the voices of all living things." The cave opened into a surprisingly large chamber, illuminated by natural light filtering through cracks in the ceiling. Ancient pictographs covered the walls, horses and humans connected by flowing lines of energy symbols, reminiscent of those Emma had drawn in her notebook for months. "The original speakers," Marie explained, indicating the images. "Those born with the gift to bridge worlds of consciousness. Like you, child." She turned to Emma with knowing eyes. "And like your mother before you." Eliza nodded, her hand moving unconsciously to where Reed's interface had been now removed by Nathan during their brief rest period, the wound already healing. "I never fully understood my connection to the research subjects," she admitted. "It always seemed more intuitive than scientific." "Because true harmony cannot be manufactured," Marie stated simply. "It can only be recognized and honored. This is what your husband discovered and what Reed sought to corrupt." Nathan moved to examine the ancient drawings more closely. "These symbols, they're remarkably similar to the harmonic frequency patterns we mapped in the laboratory, as if your ancestors somehow visualized the neural synchronization without modern technology. They did not need machines to see what was plain before them," Marie replied without condescension. "The gift of harmony has always existed in certain bloodlines. The Whispering Pines people were guardians of this knowledge until progress scattered us to the winds." She led them deeper into the cave system to a chamber where a small stream emerged from the rock wall, forming a clear pool before disappearing again into the earth. The acoustics in this space were extraordinary. Even whispers carried with perfect clarity, yet outside sounds were completely absent. "You brought Emma here once before," Marie said to Nathan, not a question, but a statement of fact. "When she was very young." Nathan looked surprised, then thoughtful. "Yes, for the original research project. She was just a toddler. I didn't think she would remember. Her conscious mind forgot, but her harmonic memory retained the experience." Marie turned to Emma. "This is why Shadow found you, child. You were already attuned to this place, to these frequencies." Emma approached the pool, drawn by something beyond rational understanding. Shadow followed, standing beside her as she knelt to touch the clear water. As her fingers broke the surface, a profound stillness descended over the chamber, deeper than silence, more complete than mere absence of sound. It was as though the very fabric of reality paused, creating space for something extraordinary to emerge. The water beneath Emma's touch began to ripple in perfect concentric circles, each one expanding outward in precise harmonic intervals. Shadow lowered his head to the water's edge, his presence somehow amplifying the effect until the entire pool resonated with visible harmonic patterns. "The counter wave," Nathan whispered, scientific understanding merging with wonder. "They're generating a harmonic counterwave strong enough to—" He didn't finish the thought, but he didn't need to. Everyone present understood the implications. Emma and Shadow, connected through their natural harmonic bond and amplified by this ancient place of power, were creating a frequency pattern that could disrupt Reed's entire technological framework. Marie nodded in satisfaction. "Now you understand why he has pursued you so relentlessly, not just for what you know, but for what you are capable of disrupting." Reed stood in the center of his underground laboratory, fury and desperation warring for dominance as he surveyed the evidence of Eliza's rescue. The neural interface she had worn for 18 months lay discarded on the examination table, its connections severed with surgical precision. How long, he demanded of the technician analyzing the facility's security logs. 2 hours before your return, sir. They accessed the medical suite using Dr. Foster's credentials and initiated an unauthorized neural procedure. Reed's composure, already fragile, threatened to shatter completely, and the tracking systems, the sonic detection array, still non-functional, sir. The storm caused significant interference, and now there's some kind of harmonic disruption affecting all our detection equipment. We can't get a lock on S7's interface signal. Reed paced the laboratory, mind racing through scenarios and contingencies. Without Eliza, without the data from her long-term neural integration, his entire project faced collapse. The military funders were growing impatient, demanding results after years of investment. Prepare the mobile harmonic projector, he ordered abruptly. Maximum output capacity. The technician paled. Sir, the mobile unit hasn't completed safety testing. At maximum output, the neural impact on anyone within range would be, I'm aware of the risks, Reed interrupted, the phrase becoming his mantra of desperation. Nathan has left me no choice. If I can't recover Eliza and the girl, I'll demonstrate the technology's ultimate capability. The collateral neural impact is acceptable under the circumstances. Reed's expression hardened into something no longer recognizable as the idealistic scientist Arthur had once known. Sometimes progress requires sacrifice. Within the sacred cave, Emma and Shadow maintained their harmonic connection at the pool's edge, generating waves of counter-frequency that rippled outward beyond the physical confines of the water. Arthur, Nathan, and Eliza monitored the effect using the portable equipment they had brought from the facility, marvel mixing with scientific curiosity. The amplitude is increasing exponentially, Nathan observed, checking the readings, far beyond what our technology could generate. And perfectly stable, Eliza added with professional admiration. No harmonic distortion or phase cancellation. Marie watched their technical discussion with patient amusement. Your machines confirm what the ancestors always knew. True harmony cannot be created, only channeled by those born with the gift. Jessica, who had been maintaining watch near the cave entrance, returned with urgent news. Movement in the valley below. Vehicles approaching military grade based on the engine signatures. Alex joined her at the narrow opening that served as a vantage point. 3 transport trucks, specialized equipment. Reed's brought significant resources. Can they detect us here? Arthur asked Marie. The elder woman shook her head confidently. The sacred caves shield against artificial frequencies, but they know we are in these mountains and they will search until they find us. Nathan studied the harmonic pattern readings with growing excitement. Unless we bring the frequency to them instead of waiting for them to find us. Eliza immediately understood his thinking. A targeted counterwave strong enough to disrupt their entire technological framework. Is that possible? Arthur asked, looking between the scientists and Marie. The elder woman nodded slowly. It was done once before in my grandmother's time, when outsiders brought machines that sickened the land and disrupted the natural harmonies. The speakers gathered at the sacred pool and sent forth a cleansing wave. Emma, who had been listening while maintaining her connection with Shadow, spoke with the clarity that had increasingly characterized her recovered voice. We can do it, she stated simply, but we need to be closer. Nathan calculated quickly. The ridge overlooking the valley would provide optimal propagation conditions, but it would expose us to potential capture if the counterwave doesn't work. It will work, Emma said with the absolute certainty of a child who has discovered her true capacity. Shadow and I together, we can generate the frequency, but we need all of you to amplify it. Marie nodded in approval. The girl understands. Harmony grows stronger when shared among those connected by bonds of love and purpose. The plan formed quickly. They would position themselves on the ridge, overlooking Reed's approaching convoy, using the natural acoustic properties of the landscape to amplify the counter-frequency Emma and Shadow generated. If successful, the harmonic wave would disrupt all of Reed's neural interface technology, rendering his weapons useless. As they prepared to leave the safety of the cave, Eliza knelt before her daughter, looking into her eyes with a mixture of maternal pride and scientific respect. What you've discovered, what you can do, it's beyond anything we theorized in the laboratory. You know that, don't you? Emma nodded, her expression reflecting wisdom beyond her years. It was always there, she said simply. I just needed to find my voice to use it. Reed stood at the edge of the command vehicle, surveying the mountainside through high-powered binoculars. The mobile harmonic projector, a massive array of specialized speakers and frequency generators mounted on a dedicated transport, hummed behind him, powering up to operational capacity. Final calibration complete, sir, reported the chief technician. Awaiting your command to initiate projection sequence. Reed lowered the binoculars, his expression set with grim determination. Begin the sweep pattern. Start at 20% capacity and increase gradually. I want neural compliance, not permanent damage, at least not until we've secured the primary targets. The technician hesitated briefly before initiating the sequence. Throughout the valley, a subtle vibration began, not quite sound, not quite feeling, but something that existed at the threshold between physical sensation and neural awareness. Animals reacted first, birds falling silent, small mammals retreating into burrows, even insects ceasing their constant movements. Increasing to 40%, the technician announced, monitoring the effects on specialized equipment. Harmonic dispersion patterns nominal? Reed watched the mountainside, intently waiting for any sign that their targets had been affected by the expanding wave of influence. Where are you hiding, Nathan? He murmured. Where have you taken my wife? As if in answer to his question, movement appeared on the ridge above a small group emerging from the tree line. Even at this distance, Reed recognized the distinctive silhouette of Shadow, with Emma mounted on his back. There, he shouted, pointing toward the ridge. Maximum projection now. Sir, jumping directly to maximum output could cause unpredictable... Do it, Reed commanded, already moving toward the tactical team. Prepare for immediate extraction of the primary targets. The harmonic projector's output surged, the invisible wave of influence, expanding across the valley with increasing intensity. Trees swayed without wind dust, particles suspended in perfect geometric patterns, the very air seeming to thicken with concentrated frequency. On the ridge, Emma felt the approaching wave like a pressure against her consciousness, Reed's technology attempting to override her natural thought patterns to impose external control on her neural functions. Beside her, Shadow tossed his head in discomfort, resisting the artificial influence through the protection of his interface. Now, Emma, Nathan urged, positioning himself with Eliza, Arthur, and the others in the formation. Marie had instructed a living amplification circuit with Emma and Shadow at its center. Emma closed her eyes, placing one hand on Shadow's neck and extending the other toward the circle of people surrounding them. The connection formed instantly, not the tentative link of their early encounters, but a fully realized harmonic bond flowing through all of them. From below, Reed watched in confusion as his targets made no attempt to retreat or seek cover. Instead, they remained exposed on the ridge, arrayed in what appeared to be a deliberate formation around the horse and child. Harmonic projector at maximum capacity, reported the technician, alarm evident in his voice. Sir, we're detecting an anomalous frequency pattern emerging from the target location. Impossible, Reed dismissed. Nothing could generate a competing frequency strong enough to... His words died as the instruments monitoring the harmonic projection suddenly spiked, then flatlined. Throughout the valley, the invisible pressure that had been building abruptly reversed, a wave of counter-frequency emanating from the ridge with such power that it overwhelmed the artificial projection completely. The effect on Reed's technology was immediate and catastrophic. The harmonic projector emitted a high-pitched whine before shutting down circuit breakers, tripping throughout the command vehicle. Communication systems failed, monitoring equipment went dark, and most significantly, the neural interfaces worn by Reed's security team, subtle variants of the technology Emma had helped remove from her mother, ceased functioning simultaneously. On the ridge, Emma maintained the counter-frequency with unwavering focus, drawing strength from Shadow and amplifying it through the circle of those connected to her. The harmonic wave they generated together spread beyond the valley, neutralizing Reed's technology wherever it encountered it. Reed stared in disbelief as his carefully constructed systems failed around him. This isn't possible, he muttered, scientific certainty crumbling in the face of something his rational mind couldn't fully comprehend. The power requirements alone would... His desperate analysis was interrupted by the approach of federal vehicles, not his reinforcements, but Sheriff Walker's promised support, finally arriving with the proper authorization to investigate ERA's unauthorized operations. As law enforcement personnel surrounded the disabled convoy, Reed looked up at the ridge one final time. Emma sat tall on Shadow's back, surrounded by her reunited family, their silhouettes outlined against the clearing. Sky-like figures from the ancient cave paintings. Humans and animals connected by lines of harmonic energy, visible now only to those with eyes to see. 6 months later, Emma stood in the expanded grounds of what had once been Arthur's modest veterinary clinic. The newly established Foster Riley Institute for Interspecies Communication had transformed the property, adding research facilities and rehabilitation spaces for animals, while preserving the natural beauty of the landscape. The drought that had plagued the valley for 3 years had finally broken new growth, greening the once parched fields. Emma walked through tall grass toward the paddock where several children, some with physical disabilities, others with communication disorders, gathered for their weekly session with the therapy horses. "Ready for today's class?" Nathan asked, joining his daughter at the fence. Emma nodded, her voice now flowing as naturally as the stream that had returned to the valley. "Maria's bringing 2 new students from the reservation," she reported. "She says they show signs of harmonic sensitivity." Nathan smiled, pride evident in his expression. "Your mother's research on the genetic markers is making remarkable progress. It seems the gift may be more widespread than we realized." They watched as Arthur led the therapy session, his experience as both veterinarian and physician uniquely qualifying him to guide the children in their first attempts at harmonic connection. Under his gentle instruction, even those who struggled with conventional communication found new pathways to expression through their interactions with the horses. Eliza emerged from the research building, pausing to observe the scene before joining her family. Her recovery had progressed steadily, her brilliant mind reclaiming its full capacity as the last neural effects of Reed's interface faded. She had channeled her experience into pioneering research on non-invasive harmonic therapies for neurological conditions, work that was already showing promising results for patients with communication disorders. "The Senate committee has finished its investigation of ERA," she informed them, linking her arm through Nathan's. "Reed's military contracts have been terminated, and the harmonic technology has been placed under international oversight." "And Reed himself?" Nathan asked, though the question held no vindictiveness, only concern that the technology they had developed could never again be weaponized. "Facing multiple federal charges," Eliza confirmed. "The evidence Jessica provided was compelling. He won't be continuing his research anytime soon." Emma's attention had drifted from the conversation, her gaze focused on the distant ridge, where a solitary figure had appeared, a black horse standing proud against the sky, watching the valley below. Shadow had remained with them through the aftermath of the confrontation with Reed, his presence essential during the establishment of the Institute and the development of ethical protocols for harmonic research. But as weeks passed and security was established, he had begun making increasingly frequent journeys into the wilderness, sometimes returning with other wild horses who seemed drawn to the harmonic energy that now flourished in the valley. "He's leaving again, isn't he?" Nathan asked gently, following his daughter's gaze. Emma nodded, a bittersweet smile touching her lips. "He needs to be free," she said with the wisdom of one who truly understood. "His work here is done." "Will you miss your connection with him?" Eliza wondered, knowing how profound the bond had become. Emma turned to her mother with serene confidence. "The connection doesn't end with distance," she explained. "Some harmonies continue even when we can't hear them with our ears." As if in confirmation of her words, Shadow reared briefly on the distant ridge, a dramatic silhouette against the afternoon sky, before turning away toward the mountains. He would return occasionally, they all knew this. But his primary purpose now lay in the wilderness, leading his growing herd of wild Mustangs through their renewed landscape. Emma raised her hand in farewell, sending a final thought across the distance between them. "Goodbye, my friend. I will always hear you." And somewhere in the space between human consciousness and wild freedom, Shadow's response flowed back to her, not in words but in the pure harmonic resonance that had first awakened her voice and would continue to guide her path forward. 30 years later, Dr. Emma Foster stood before a classroom of children from diverse cultural backgrounds, Her once small frame now carrying the dignified presence of a woman who had dedicated her life to bridging worlds of consciousness. The harmonic connection exists in all living things. She explained, her voice carrying the gentle authority of one who speaks from direct experience, rather than merely theoretical knowledge. But some of us are born with the ability to perceive it more clearly, to navigate its currents, and even to share those currents with others. The children listened with varying degrees of attention, some captivated, others skeptical, a few distracted by the sunlight streaming through their classroom windows. At the back of the room, a small girl with solemn eyes repeatedly glanced outside, seemingly more interested in something beyond the walls than in the lesson. Emma noticed the child's divided attention, but continued her lecture without interruption. As the class progressed, however, she found herself increasingly drawn to the girl's quiet intensity, recognizing something familiar in her disconnection from the conventional communication around her. When the other students filed out for their break, Emma approached the girl, who remained seated, still gazing out the window with focused attention. "You hear them, don't you?" Emma asked softly. The child looked up, surprise and wariness giving way to cautious hope as she realized she was truly seen. She nodded once, a simple confirmation that needed no elaboration. Emma moved to the window, looking out to where a small herd of wild horses grazed on the protected land surrounding the now internationally renowned institute. Among them, a striking black Mustang descendant of Shadow, carrying the same proud bearing and intelligent gaze, stood slightly apart, watching the building as though waiting for something or someone. "Sometimes," Emma said to the girl, "the most important voices are the ones we cannot hear with our ears." The child joined her at the window, her small hand slipping naturally into Emma's as they observed the black horse raise his head in acknowledgement of their attention. "Would you like to meet him?" Emma asked. The girl nodded, a smile transforming her solemn face. "He's been calling me," she whispered, breaking what Emma now recognized as a silence similar to the one she herself had once carried. "I know," Emma replied, the wisdom of 30 years of harmonic research and personal experience evident in her gentle smile. "That's how it begins." Together they walked out into the sunlight toward the waiting horse, and the continuation of a harmony that flowed through generations of those who had learned to listen to the wild voices that spoke beyond words. As the sun sets over the renewed valley of whispering pines, the wild horses run free again, their hoof beats a rhythm that echoes the heartbeat of the mountains themselves. Emma's journey from silence to voice changed more than just her life. It healed a family torn apart by secrets. It restored a natural harmony that technology had threatened to silence forever. It reminded us that some connections exist beyond our ability to explain them, bridges between consciousness that have always been there, waiting to be rediscovered. We all carry a wild voice within us, a truth that sometimes gets buried beneath the noise of modern life, a capacity to connect that requires no words, no technology, no external validation. What voices might you hear if you simply pause to listen? What silent connections await in the spaces between your thoughts? Perhaps the most profound wisdom lies not in our ability to speak, but in our willingness to truly hear, to recognize the harmonies that flow through all living things, connecting us in ways both ancient and new. In a world that grows increasingly loud, sometimes the most revolutionary act is to honor the silence and to listen for the wild voices that speak beyond words,